Chapter 552. Now Red Hair Shanks is the opposite of his usual gentle self. His eyes are cold and murderous. Even because of his companions, Hockey's control and power are on a higher level. At this moment, Red Hair is still bloodthirsty. Is this the other side of your treatment of the enemy, Shanks? Holding the black sword in both hands, Hawkeye didn't forget to tease Shanks. You seem to be a lot stronger than before. At the same time, your wisdom has decreased a lot. Hawkeye's eyes lit up as he noticed that the red-haired Shanks was full of flaws. He raised the black blade in his hand and pounced towards the red-haired Shanks. Ripples appeared in the void as the jade-green sword energy crushed towards the red-haired Shanks. The moment it was about to swallow Red Hair, another change occurred. Bang bang bang, a series of muffled gunshots rang out, followed by several pitch-black bullets that pierced through the awe-inspiring radiance. The awe-inspiring radiance was unscathed, but its fierce momentum was weakened by 70%. Boom! The western sword in his hand was gently raised and threw out a cold light. Hawkeye's attack collapsed and turned into a dense rainstorm. When it came into contact with Red Hair, the power had been greatly reduced and was easily dispersed by him. Bullets covered with armament, Hawkeye? Hawkeye frowned deeply and said, "Just a few fleeting black bullets were difficult to catch with the naked eye. Only observation Hawkeye can capture the speed of the bullets." Hawkeye keenly found that the bullets wrapped with armament Hawkeye were swallowed by his attack, but it also weakened the power of the attack in a disguised way. When it was close to Red Hair, the power was less than 20%. "You bastard." Hawkeye's face changed slightly and his eyes were hoarse. He had already guessed who the instigator behind the scenes was. His sharp eyes expanded and all the movements around him were taken into his eyes. The people who ambushed him were the crew of Red Hair pirates. "You want to involve other people in the personal grievances between you and me?" The hands holding the black sword trembled, and Hawkeye's mood splashed huge ripples. The dialogue was full of gunpowder. Hawkeye went to the battle alone, but Red Hair secretly ambushed his crew and dared to interrupt the duel between them. How could Hawkeye not be angry? Staring at the red-haired Shanks in front of him, this was the first time in his life that he felt that the red-haired Shanks was so unfamiliar. That good brother of his who drank and chatted merrily with him in the past seemed to be a disguise. "I should have said before that I am not a swordsman but a pirate." The red-haired Shanks smiled calmly. For pirates, despicable or not, no one cares about these details. It's all up to the winner. A trustworthy pirate is not a good pirate. The competition between us is over. The sword in his hand returned to the scabbard. He closed his eyes and recalled the previous battle. Red Hair said, "Frankly speaking, I'm not as good as you, the world's greatest swordsman, in terms of swordsmanship. But in terms of overall ability, I'm still slightly better. However, all of this is not important now." His eyes suddenly opened, emitting a dark light that was enough to swallow Hawkeye. Red Hair's cold voice resounded through the sky. "The duel between you and me ended ahead of time. Now, it's going to be a war between you and the Akagami Red Hair pirates." As Red Hair's powerful roar fell, the surrounding environment was filled with sand and stones. Under the reflection of the sand, several hazy figures swept out one after another. The members of the Akagami Red Hair pirates who were secretly peeping finally jumped out of the water. The Akagami Red Hair pirates all appeared. "That bastard is really shameless. He can do such a shameless thing." In the dense jungle, White Zetsu was indignant, but he was not worried. There were many projection Den Mushi beside him, and the other side was connected to Mariehua Dustless. Compared to White Zetsu, Dustless is much happier. Howl! A sharp whistling sound resounded through the sky, and a green light cut through the void, followed by a huge chop that was powerful enough to destroy a mountain swept towards the Akagami Red Hair pirates. And Hawkeye has already seen the situation and slipped away. In such a critical moment, Hawkeye naturally won't be stupid enough to fight hard. It's useless to show off his courage. If Akagami Red Hair is alone, Hawkeye can fight him, but if the whole Akagami Red Hair pirate ship besieges him together, it will be like ants biting an elephant to death. The crew of the Akagami Red Hair pirates are the elites of the elites, and there is only one way to go if they fight hard. Dustless, who is far away in Mariehua, is living a free and easy life. The image reflected in the Den Mushi in front of him is a live broadcast of Hawkeye and Akagami, accompanied by a peerless beauty. On the left is the indifferent Princess Otoheim, and on the right is Hancock, who is responsible for Dustless's daily life. Your subordinates are being chased to the point of no return, yet you still have the leisure to eat fruits? Princess Odoheim disdained to communicate with Dustless, but the scene in front of her made her speechless. She saw Dustless comfortably swallowing the crystal grape sent by Hancock's jade hand. This lazy look is like a god. The number of times you take the initiative to talk to me is very few. Dustless was slightly surprised, but he didn't think that Princess Odoheim would be fascinated by his style and turn over a new leaf. In the past, Princess Odoheim avoided him, and the chances of her taking the initiative to talk to him were zero. We're a family, don't say 2 words if you have something to say, you're also my possession. Dustless generously promised Princess Odoheim, but his malicious eyes were hard to believe. Hearing this, Princess Odoheim's eyes flashed. She did have something to ask. After knowing each other for a long time, she also understood Dustless's mind. If she followed his words, she would be safe. If she didn't open her eyes, she would have a serious end. Princess Odoheim has a deep understanding of this. These days she has been obedient to Dustless and they get along very well. Chapter 553. Princess E.G. was bashful. She wanted to say something but stopped. Wu Chen's smiling expression was extremely hateful in her eyes. The corners of his mouth were raised high. He was no different from an old fox waiting for a rabbit to come to his door. I don't have anything to ask of you. Turning her head, Princess Aji ignored Wu Chen's gaze. Out of sight, out of mind. The more she spoils Dustless, the worse he will become. After a while, Princess Odoheim has a little understanding of him, and after several summaries she has found an alternative way to make a living. Boring. Seeing that Princess Odoheim didn't answer, Dustless also retracted his gaze and touched his smooth chin. He is only interested in the prey that will resist, and the sheep that are obedient can't arouse the slightest interest like chicken bones, it's a pity to throw them away. Sure enough, it's the same as what Hancock said. Seeing that Dustless didn't pay attention to her, Princess Odoheim's mouth raised a smile of conspiracy, and at the same time she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and suddenly found that the previous fierce resistance was simply self-destruction. She behaved obediently. Over time, Wu Chen's interest in her would gradually fade. It's true that people's hearts can't be seen. Hancock's eyes were always observing the scene in the Den Den Mushi, and it was extremely complicated. In her impression, Akagami is the kind of bold pirate who is very heroic and attaches importance to the existence of his companions. The red-haired man in front of her subverted her previous understanding. This may be the situation. Princess Odoheim also slightly nodded, and there was an incredible look in her eyes as she whispered, I have heard that Akagami Shanks is a person who attaches great importance to friendship. As the queen of the Fishman Island, Princess Odoheim is more knowledgeable than Hancock. Akagami Shanks is an anomaly among the pirates. Among the Yonko, 4 emperors, he is the only one who drifts around without a fixed residence. Whether it is the Whitebeard pirates, the Bigumamu pirates, or the Kaido pirates, the New World has annexed countless islands, only Akagami Shanks is home and roams the world. He is the opposite of those ambitious pirates. Value friendship? Red Hair Shanks is indeed that kind of man. Even if he was slapped in the face, he wouldn't allow others to bully his friends or crew. But that was in the past. Now Hawkeye is on my side and our positions are different. Hawkeye can hurt his friends at any time, so naturally Red Hair Shanks is eager to kill him. Dustless was quite clear about this. Red Hair Shanks was a person who valued friendship and loyalty, but this rule was only limited to his close friends and companions. Hawkeye, who used to be his best friend, was now his enemy. That was all. To put it bluntly, the red-haired Shanks you respected in the past is just a clown. Dustless added fuel to the fire when he saw Princess Odoheim and Hancock's eyes were slightly dim. Facts speak louder than words and there is no need for Dustless to fabricate. What happened in the Den Den Mushi in front of him has already explained everything. Treat your friends with respect, but if you are an enemy, you will naturally fight with your sword. Everyone actually has 2 sides of justice and evil. Red Hair Shanks used to expose his positive and optimistic side, and now it belongs to the other side that few people know. Dustless said bluntly with a contemptuous attitude towards Red Hair Shanks. It's true that pirates are not good things. After a long silence, Hancock nodded slightly and found that her previous ideas were too naive. She immediately looked at Princess Odoheim and said contemptuously, Do you think that Whitebeard sheltered your Fishman Island without a purpose? Stupid. Dustless sneered, and Whitebeard inexplicably found that he had done too many wrong things in half of his life. Sheltering the Fishman Island? It's tantamount to a fantasy. What is a pirate? The pursuit of profit, This is the true portrayal of a pirate. Burning and looting under the loud slogan of pursuing dreams, this is a pirate. Whitebeard is the most powerful pirate with both wisdom and courage. Sheltering the Fishman Island for no reason is unclear. According to Dustless's guess, there must be some unknown purpose. Impossible, he is very friendly to the Fishman Island. Her pretty face changed greatly and Princess Odoheim argued. During the time when Whitebeard sheltered the Fishman Island, the foreign pirates were low-key, and the Fishman Island became a peaceful paradise. I only believe that no one gets up early without profit. Glancing at Princess Odoheim, Dustless sighed. The Fishman's idea is always too pure, and dealing with cunning humans will only lead to deceit. In your impression, Red Hair Shanks is very forthright and unrestrained. But now he and his crew besieged Hawkeye. The white beard you see is only the color on the surface. Only God knows what he really is. Speaking of this, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Everyone has two sides. Before, Red Hair Shanks exposed only the surface character of people, and now this scene is the darkness in his heart. Each of the Yonko, 4 emperors, of the New World is actually a bloody executioner. Whitebeard and Red Hair Shanks are like this. It is because the world is afraid of their strength, and because each of them stepped on a mountain of corpses, which indirectly laid the foundation for their Yonko, 4 emperors, name. That is to say, everyone also has two sides and you are no exception. Princess Odoheim is obviously much bolder than the slightly obedient Hancock. Dustless smiled and did not deny it and seriously replied, yes. What about your dark side? Princess Odoheim blinked and asked curiously. Akagami, this kind of person could give up everything to kill Hawkeye. Once Dustless broke out, she was curious about what unexpected things would happen. God knows. Dustless shrugged and at the same time, he couldn't help but think about Whitebeard's intentions and purposes for sheltering the Fishman Island. It is certain that his thoughts are not simple. There must be other plans. Chapter 554. A pirate with a high bounty means that their hands are stained with more blood. There is no reason for the strongest butcher like Whitebeard to shelter the Fishman Island for no reason. Impossible he must be. You are just deceiving yourself. I am afraid that you can't even deceive yourself. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted Princess Odoheim's speech and said indifferently. There is no profit, this is the truth that will never change. Princess Odoheim's face was blue when she heard this, and she wanted to refute but she was speechless. After thinking about it, Whitebeard, a big pirate, sheltering the Fishman Island for no reason is indeed somewhat unreasonable and extraordinary. It is extremely difficult to find an excuse that can convince and deceive her. You want to get the protection of the government, but you are sworn brothers with Whitebeard, an enemy? Shaking his head, Dustless sighed that Princess Odoheim's idea was ridiculous and naive. She wanted to join the world government and get protection, but she secretly became sworn brothers with Whitebeard. This way of stepping on two boats is only self-destruction. Whitebeard, although I don't know what you're plotting, but you'd better not have that kind of thought or else, humph. Wu Qin snorted with a bone-chilling light in his eyes. The dragon has a reverse scale and it will die. The relationship between Roger and Whitebeard is unusual. It is not ruled out that he told Whitebeard the content of the Poneglyph, and after witnessing the strength of the world government, Whitebeard also moved other thoughts. He wants to defeat the world government and Marine in an alternative way, or simply to protect his sons. Don't tell me you're saying that her intentions are... Princess Odoheim's face was ugly, and the reason why Dustless valued her was clear for a long time. Hearing this, Dustless nodded silently this time. Although it was only a guess at the moment, there was only one thing on the Fishman Island that could attract a legendary figure like Whitebeard. I told you before that everyone has two sides. Don't think of Whitebeard as a sheep. The old man is actually a beast that can devour everything. Dustless said seriously. Whitebeard doesn't know some Poneglyph, but his best friend One Piece Joldy Roger does know many unknown secrets. It was not impossible to tell Whitebeard some important information. There's an 80% chance that they're here for the Sea King. However, I hope that old man knows what's good for him. Dustless's gaze fell on Princess Otoji's body. He gently patted her shoulder and said with a pleasant smile, there is no need to worry. When I let you go, I left my power in you and your mother. With the birth of Shirahoshi, my power has also been transferred to her. If Whitebeard dares to act rashly, he will be caught in his own trap. I hope so. Princess Aji nodded worriedly. Although it's just Dustless's guess, the only thing that can attract Whitebeard on Fishman Island is the ancient weapon, Sea King. The source of Whitebeard's news is naturally Roger, the Pirate King. Although Whitebeard is a pirate, he is not a brainless man. He knows what's more important. He won't touch the key to open Pandora's ink box unless he has to. He can't afford such a price and consequences. Taking advantage of the situation, he took Princess Aji into his arms. Wu Chen explained while taking advantage of her. Unlike before, Princess Otoji did not resist this time. Her eyes were dotted with pitiful hesitation and helplessness. Instead of refusing Dustless, she grabbed his clothes. It seems that only when her heart is empty and flustered can she calm down. If Whitebeard really wants to rob Shirahoshi, no one on Fishman Island can stop him. The only life-saving straw is Dustless. Don't worry, Whitebeard is not a god. He may only know that the Sea King exists on Fishman Island. He doesn't know who it is. Dustless comforted her softly. The poneglyph only records the location of the ancient weapon. It doesn't detail who it is. Looking at today's world, the people who know that Shirahoshi is the Sea King are definitely not more than 5. The reason why Princess Otoji knew was that Dustless told her impatiently. That man seems to have landed on the island, master? Hancock said with a smile, and her voice was like the sound of nature, making people addicted. Dustless glanced at her faintly and then nodded slightly. His eyes moved away from Princess Otoji's body and stared at the image reflected in the Den Mushi. What came into view was the embarrassed Beckman. This savior finally appeared. Otherwise, Hawkeye might have been besieged by Akagami, red hair, pirates, and died. Beckman came to Hawkeye's rescue. This carefully arranged script is good. Dustless's mouth outlined a gloomy smile, and his tone was unusually hoarse. Princess Otoji and Hancock, sitting next to Dustless, looked at each other and could see the looming fear in each other's eyes. The only fortunate thing is that this gloomy taste is not directed at the two of them. Don't tell me you're counting on Beckman to help Hawkeye? Patting her chest, Princess Otoheim tried her best to remain calm and asked curiously. Hancock also tilted her head and looked at Dustless with her smart eyes. Apparently, she was also looking forward to Dustless's answer. It's true. When I saw him a few months ago, I left something special in his body, but because my ability was too strange, Beckman couldn't detect it. Dustless said lightly as if he had done a trivial thing. He quietly tasted the hot tea in his hand, but the evil smile on the corner of his mouth was enough to make people retreat. He looked at Beckman with contempt. The joy reflected in his eyes was clearly visible. Wu Chen's face was full of contempt and disdain. What awaited Beckman was not the joy of reuniting after so many hardships, but the complete fall from heaven to hell. Chapter 555. Crossing the endless sea and experiencing countless twists and turns, what brought the crew under the flag was not the joy after the reunion, but the shadow that could not be waved away. There is nothing more ironic than this. Princess Otoheim looked at Dustless with cold legs and finally understood his intentions. Thinking of Dustless's crazy ideas, her whole body trembled slightly. Killing people is nothing more than a nod of the head, the cruel borrowing of a knife to kill people. Such a practice may lead to the Akagami, red hair, pirates falling apart like a plate of loose sand. Don't show such an incredible expression. This is called retribution. It's all red hair Shank's fault, and he has to pay the price for meddling in other people's business. Seeing Princess Otoheim's pupils widening, Dustless said helplessly, his face full of disapproval. He didn't feel that it was too much. It is true that he can crush the conspiracy of the Akagami, red hair, pirates, but the effect is different from that of the vice-captain. The vice-captain, who usually gives trust, suddenly starts to attack his own crew one day, and the effect is absolutely unprecedented. Even if he can't wipe out the Akagami, red hair, pirates, there are very few people who are willing to follow Akagami, red hair, pirates in the future. That kid has taken an inch and taken a mile again and again. Does he think that Yonko, 4 emperors, can do whatever he wants? If I don't teach him a lesson, he will really think that I am mud. Dustless sneered again and again, and his whole body was covered with deep cold air. The current red hair was quite scheming, but he had not yet reached the level of perfection. At such a young age, he had become one of the 4 emperors, whose name shook the world at the age of 30. It was normal for him to have an arrogant attitude because of his talent. Understanding is understanding. If you want Dustless to agree with it, it is a dream. It is just right to take advantage of the arrest of Beckman this time to defeat the Akagami, red hair, pirates and drive them out of the new world. Isn't it self-destruction to do this? Consort Aji's chest tightened as she nervously asked. She knew that Dustless was very strong, but she didn't think he had the strength to contend with the four emperors. Those arrogant pirates were all peerless powerhouses who had experienced hundreds of battles. Every one of the Yonko, four emperors, can be called an invincible monster existence. In a duel in a one-to-one state, even if an admiral of the Marine headquarters goes on the field, the one who will be trampled in the end will definitely be the admiral. For example, Whitebeard is the strongest pirate among the Yonko, four emperors. Now in his heyday he is invincible. His strength is enough to crush all opponents. Even if Red Hair Shanks was not as good as Whitebeard, he believed that he would not be too bad. You're right, it was indeed self-destruction. However, the one who self-destructed was Red Hair Shanks. Dustless's lips curled into a cold arc as he spoke emotionlessly. Sister Aji is worried, young master will definitely win. Hancock grinned and showed a bright smile. She was full of confidence in Dustless. Others may not know, but the defeat of 100 Beast Kaido a few days ago was still vivid in Hancock's mind. Beckman, who had come ashore in a hurry, had a desolate look on his face. His eyes were dim and his face was as pale as snow. Looking at his waist, there were still dark red bloodstains. As time passed, they had slowly coagulated into scars. The piercing pain from all over his body had numbed his nerves. This conspicuous scar was left by Wu Qin. On the surface, it didn't look very fatal, but in fact it almost took his life. If it wasn't for his many years of painstakingly practicing body arts and training an indestructible body, the consequence of being hit head-on by that kick would have been his corpse separated from his head. The escape from Impel Down had left an indelible impression in Beckman's heart. His heart was full of mixed feelings. It was the first time he realized that he was so fragile. The enemy was in front of him, but he could only flee like a mouse. The blow it brought was indescribable. It seems that Captain has already started. His wings are full, I can only break them one by one. Quickly adjusting his mentality, Beckman's eyes lit up, dragging his exhausted body, his observation haki expanded and he slowly walked towards the center of the fight. Only by annihilating all these dogs first can he hit the power to deal with Dustless. Although it is only a passive strategy, it is the most effective strategy so far. About half an hour later, Beckman found the traces of Akagami, Red Hair, and others as well as Hawkeye, who was forced by the crew of Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. The bloody traces all over his body were clearly visible. Who can hurt you like this? Seeing Beckman appear, Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks asked in surprise and his heart was shocked. The fire that was enough to swallow the endless sky flashed away. Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks values friendship and loyalty, and his character of valuing his companions is known to the world. The trusted vice captain was severely injured, and it immediately aroused the boiling killing intent in his heart. It doesn't matter, that man is not something we can deal with now. Beckman smiled bitterly, and his deep eyes were not as wise as before, and they were very dim. Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks looked stiff, and he naturally understood the man in Beckman's air. He unwillingly clenched his huge fist and finally could only sigh helplessly. The current gap between him and Dustless really made him helpless. I'm fine, I'm just slightly injured. It's still because my strength is not enough. With a self-deprecating look on his face, Beckman said weakly. The whole person is like a willow fluttering in the wind, drifting with the waves. A group of Akagami, Red Hair, pirates saw this scene with mixed feelings and looked guilty. The vice captain almost died and fell in Impel Down. They could only watch and couldn't play any role. It was not difficult to guess what they were thinking. Now the goal is him. With all his strength, Beckman changed the topic and brought the problem to Hawkeye's head. When he was about to kill Hawkeye with Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks, his eyes were strangely empty. The black eyes were shining with an evil luster, the corners of his mouth were high, revealing a ferocious evil smile, and his momentum was very strange. Suddenly he turned his head and locked his eyes on the members of Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. His eyes also changed dramatically. Chapter 556. Akagami, Red Hair, stared at Beckman with a frown and suddenly realized that something was wrong. He instinctively perceived the danger, but out of their feelings for each other for many years, he didn't think that Beckman would harm him or his companions. Beckman knew, Akagami, Red Hair, was full of doubts as he looked at Beckman, who was full of evil temperament. His eyebrows were deeply squeezed together, and an obvious chuan appeared between his eyebrows. The sudden strange dark temperament always felt like déjà vu. At some time in the past, he seemed to have experienced this kind of different aura from someone familiar. Is it? Mihawk, who was beaten by a group of people, showed a glimmer of hope in his desperate eyes, and a pair of strange scarlet eyes appeared in his mind. His slightly sluggish spirit was swept away and he was full of energy in an instant. The crew of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates stared at Beckman. The usually gentle and approachable vice captain was like a monster in human skin at this moment, and he had become a monster inside. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a monstrous black flame was brewing in Beckman's eyes. His dry and cracked lips parted slightly, and a pitch-black will-o'-the-wisp that could annihilate everything in the world burst out. Amaterasu. The fire of the netherworld swallowed the surroundings in an instant, and the undying fire was surging, strange and unpredictable beyond imagination, and even burned on a small pool, unable to be extinguished. All of the crew members were stunned. They had not expected this sudden situation. They turned their heads and suddenly felt a burning pain on their skin. Their bodies were also occupied by this black fire. Some people didn't even have time to scream, and they were directly swallowed by the Amaterasu without leaving any bones, and even the dregs disappeared out of thin air, leaving only dark flames on the ground. Damn it, it hurts. What kind of fire is this, and it can't be extinguished? Bastard, why are you doing this to your own people? The crew members who were tragically swallowed by the black flames roared in panic, and their tone was full of hatred. The vice captain, who they usually trusted most, suddenly attacked them and they were shocked and angry. The reason why they weren't swallowed was that some of them had already learned the entry skills of armament hockey, and they could turn their bodies into an indestructible steel defense. However, even so, it was still unspeakably painful and torturous. Being able to die was a blessing from the heavens. The pain of being roasted by the Amaterasu made them wish they were dead. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few crew members left in the entire Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. Only a small number of elites remained. Most of these people were outstanding existences with observation hockey or armament hockey. Beckman, give me an explanation. Looking around at the scattered crew members, the red-haired Shanks's eyes were about to split open. Boundless murderous intent erupted from him as he roared at Beckman. At the moment when the black fire burned, Akagami, Red Hair, was also swallowed. His armament hockey was superb and he used hockey defense in an instant to survive. His body was only slightly burned, but the mental blow was unparalleled. You're not Beckman. Who the hell are you? Narrowing his eyes, red-haired Shanks realized that something was wrong. He locked his gaze on Beckman and clenched his fists. The black flame was clearly some kind of mysterious ability. Beckman was not an ability user, or there was no ability user in the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. Once a person is angry, his reason and actions will be full of flaws and various fatal loopholes will appear all over his body. This is the case with Akagami, Red Hair, in front of him. His hockey raged uncontrollably and his momentum was monstrous. He was like a lion with messy red hair and a black cloak dancing without wind. At this moment, a black afterimage galloped over. The eagle's eyes jumped with a threatening chill. Like a storm, it raged in front of Akagami, Red Hair. The cold light jumped up and printed on the chest of Akagami, Red Hair, forever. Hey, Pucci. With a roar of steel, the galloping cold light broke through the defense of Akagami, Red Hair. His chest suddenly split open and the long and narrow knife wound was clearly visible. The angry red-haired Shanks's face was as pale as paper, and his body swayed and almost fell to the ground. The initiator of this is Iris, without any emotion, only thousands of indifferent eagle eyes, staring blankly at Akagami, Red Hair, and immediately kicked him away. This is just politeness, Shanks. Staring at Akagami, Red Hair, who flew out, Hawkeye said coldly. Looking around, his body was also full of large and small wounds. His condition was not much better than Akagami, Red Hair. The bloodstains have dyed Hawkeye's clothes scarlet. Good job, Hawkeye. Nodding with satisfaction, Beckman smiled and said in a frivolous tone. Akagami, Red Hair. Shanks gritted his teeth and stood up. The crew of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates who survived flocked over and looked at his injuries with worry. It turned out to be you. I always felt that Beckman's evil temperament was familiar, and now there is always contempt and indifference in his tone. It turned out to be you. Staring at Beckman, the figure of Dustless appeared in his mind. Carefully comparing, it was almost 10 times similar. This is the unique technique of the Sharingan called the transcription seal, but because this guy doesn't have the Sharingan, it is not perfect. It can only store a small amount of chakra, and the power is only a few layers. Otherwise, maybe all the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates would have been killed. Beckman, said in a rather regretful tone. Among the Yonko 4 emperors, only Akagami, red hair, Shanks's power is the most fragile, but the crew is the elite of the elite, all of them are veteran strong. Of course, red hair Shanks wasn't interested in material benefits. As for the reason for not letting go of your pirates, you have to find a reason. Scratching his head helplessly, Dustless seemed to be very entangled and said in a low voice, "Looking at your ugly appearance after killing each other, this is the picture I am looking forward to." The casual words made everyone, including Akagami, red hair, angry, and they immediately planned to fight. Thinking that the physical attack would be borne by Beckman, their hearts were extremely uncomfortable. It was more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. Especially the smile in his eyes made them want to vomit blood, silently telling them that I am here and I promise not to run. Come and hit me if you have the guts. There was a flash of light in his mind, and Akagami, red hair, Shanks understood Dustless's intentions in the blink of an eye. "You despicable bastard, I will definitely kill you with my own hands in the future to comfort those souls who cannot rest in peace in the underworld." The red-haired Shanks clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked as he spoke in a threatening tone. Dustless's move was very vicious. Not only did he let Beckman bear the notoriety of killing each other, but he also cut off the retreat of the Akagami, red hair, pirates. Who would join a pirate group that kills each other? Even though the red-haired Shanks did not care about these things, and he could laugh off the ridicule from the outside world, he could not bear to see his best friend carry such a heavy bad reputation, and live with his spine being poked at for the rest of his life. He thought that Sengoku was despicable enough and liked to play tricks. Now compared with Dustless, Sengoku is much cuter. The new fleet admiral of the Marines still pays attention to the bottom line, and Dustless can use any despicable means without mercy to achieve his goals. Don't put on such a scary expression. I think you should thank me. You are a group of pirates, nothing more than to stand out. Tomorrow the name Beckman will spread all over the world. Controlling the body of Beckman, Dustless laughed. Staring at the red hair Shanks who wanted to tear himself into pieces, grind his bones and scatter his ashes, but he could only hold it back. He was almost angry to the point of internal injury. At the same time he gave Hawkeye a look. There is no need to fight with the Akagami, red hair, pirates. Chakra has been exhausted and being outnumbered is only one reason. The second reason is that the Akagami, red hair, pirates have been hit hard, and the new world is bound to become the prey of others. If they want to continue their journey they can only withdraw from the new world and avoid the sharp edge. Hawkeye nodded slightly, and the black sword in his hand returned to his back. He took a deep look at Akagami, red hair, Shanks, then turned and flashed into the dense jungle and disappeared. The so-called Shichibukai and Yonko 4 emperors are not at the same level. Hawkeye, who retreated quickly, sighed and looked at the wounds all over his body. His eyes couldn't help but dim. If Dustless hadn't arrived in time and attacked him with incredible means, he would have been besieged to death. At this moment, the Akagami, red hair, pirates are celebrating the killing of the world's best swordsman on the sea. Don't chase, it's not necessary. Looking at the disappearing figures in the jungle, Akagami, red hair, Shanks waved his hand and stopped the crew from chasing. The plan has evolved to such a step and has completely failed. The flawless plan failed because of the influence of Dustless, and the culprit was his deputy captain. Chapter 558. Red hair Shanks frowned tightly. He didn't know what Dustless was thinking, but there was suddenly an inexplicable voice in his heart telling him to run away immediately. It was indeed a bit abrupt, but it was unusually true. However, red hair Shanks still chose to act rationally and completely ignored his inner instincts. There was no other reason than that after he slipped away, his vice-captain would definitely become a turtle in a jar. It was impossible for him to give up on Beckman, and the principle of valuing his companions would never change. Don't worry, it's not just your Akagami, red hair, pirates, but the other pirates around the island will also be buried with him. Seeing the sweat on red hair Shanks' temples becoming more and more obvious, Dustless softly, kindly, advised him. Hearing this, the optimistic red hair Shanks just showed a smile on his face. Although it looked extremely far-fetched, it also highlighted his cheerful mentality, showing that he was not afraid of death. Is that so? I didn't expect you, who regarded life as grass, to be so kind. Holding the western sword in his hand, red hair Shanks said bluntly. In such an urgent state of mind, he was still calm and had already put life and death out of his mind. I hope you can be so calm when you go to heaven. Beckman said indifferently with murderous intent in his eyes. This cold tone was indeed like what the red-haired Shanks had said before. It was full of contempt for all living things, and its words revealed a sense of superiority. Unlike the red-haired Shanks, Wu Qin thought that it should be so. The weak were naturally dominated by the strong. The law of the jungle was the law of the jungle. Every world was nothing more than this. Without strength you would be trampled by the enemy. If you wanted to live safely, you could only become the top predator in the food chain. It was precisely because of this idea of being vigilant in times of peace that Wu Qin could take this step today. Closing his eyes, Beckman was too lazy to talk nonsense with red-hair Shanks. This kind of pirate mentality has been deeply ingrained, and it is nonsense to say more. Rottenwood can't be carved. Is it coming? Seeing Beckman coldly close his eyes, red-haired Shanks felt his hair stand on end. He looked at Dustless warily. As long as Dustless's remaining power in Beckman's body disappeared with the wind, he would seize the opportunity to take back Beckman. Victory or defeat was no longer important to him. Dustless squinted his eyes and peered at the red-haired man. His hoarse voice was filled with a hint of playfulness. Clearly, Dustless was looking forward to the scene when the red-haired Shanks saw the calamitous seismic star. After a while, the tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. The remaining Beckman and the chakra in his body were located. His eyes opened and emitted a dim light. Chapter 559. Beckman's face was full of surprise, and his mind was shaken. The image reflected in his eyeball was replaced by the slowly falling meteorite, and he was extremely speechless. The meteorites that appeared out of nowhere were like small mud balls that one could pinch with one's hand. There were as many as one wanted, and there was no end to them. The endless meteorites filled the sky, and the surrounding sea was dark. The pirates who were fleeing in all directions were stunned as they looked up at the meteorites in the sky. They thought that they were going to heaven, but they once again fell into hell, and the hope in their hearts instantly disappeared. There was no need to deliberately lock onto the target. It was just an indiscriminate attack, and it was useless to retreat to the end of the world. The island that couldn't withstand the attack of the second meteorite would inevitably explode, and the resulting waves would be enough to swallow everything in the world. Let's kill that meteorite together. Some pirates who were unwilling to leave the world used all kinds of abilities to bombard the meteorite falling from the sky. All kinds of ability users used all their strength to try to slow down the meteorite's falling speed, but the effect was minimal. The surface of the meteorite only splashed dust, and the dust that peeled off was negligible. It couldn't shake him at all. The second meteorite continued to fall slowly, covering the sky. The area covered by the black shadow was silent, and it was dead silent. All in all, no matter how they escaped, it was useless. The falling meteorite oppressed everyone's nerves, and even some pirates who couldn't withstand the pressure fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth and fainting, slowly waiting for death. This was 10 times more uncomfortable than directly killing them with a sword. Red-hair Shanks, F***K your ancestors, aren't they known as the Yonko, that ruled the world? Come out and show your peerless side. Bullshit, Yonko. They are all just fence-sitters. Idiot, stop dreaming. That red-hair Shanks is just a villain who ran away when he saw the situation wasn't good. Do you really think that he will jump out like a savior to save the world? This is just a fairy tale. There's no rush in dreaming when you die. In the face of such a desperate situation, the pirates who couldn't bear it finally exposed their ugly nature and began to complain about the initiator, red-hair Shanks. They didn't care about the situation and began to express their condolences to red-hair Shanks and his family. For a moment he made a fool of himself. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well express his condolences to his family before he died. That way he could barely take advantage of them verbally. The rude pirates naturally had no scruples when they scolded people, and their merciless abuse was hard to listen to. These bastards. But I think you also understand that he boldly broke into Mariehua, so it's not reasonable to let him go so easily. Looking at Princess Odoheim, Dustless said with a smile, and the meaning revealed in his tone was quite simple. He can let them go, but he needs chips. Princess Odoheim is not an ordinary person. She used to be the princess of the Fishman Island, and she has seen pirates like Dustless. Her shrewdness is also quite good. She immediately understood Dustless's intentions and asked bluntly, "What are your conditions?" Dustless smiled when he heard the words, and then put his mouth next to Princess Odoheim. Her jade fingers tightly grasped the corner of her clothes, and Princess Odoheim's face was slightly red. She thought that Dustless would put forward dirty conditions, but the content of his words made her face strange. Is that simple? Looking at Dustless with a puzzled face, Princess Odoheim was suspicious of this. Dustless glanced at Princess Odoheim faintly, then nodded silently, and the serious expression on his cheeks also dispelled Princess Odoheim's doubts. Chapter 560. Sakazuki was so tactful that he silently explained everything. Only Sengoku and Sengoku could make such a stubborn person like him change his mind. Only then would he not dare to act rashly. It's just a trivial matter. Even if he knows Sengoku can't change the reality. Even if he is dissatisfied, he can only endure it. For the sake of Caesar and my invincibility, he won't do this kind of losing business. He raised his head and looked at the exquisitely decorated ceiling. It was dust-free and light. In the world where the strong are respected, the right to speak is in the hands of the strongest. Dustless, whose fist is bigger than Sengoku, stood in the most favorable position from the beginning to overlook the development of the situation, and then he influenced the development of the situation in his own favor. Dustless's identity and strength are above Sengoku. He has absolute power and unparalleled strength. After the combination of the two, any strategy is self-humiliating and the effect is negligible. This is the case every time. The real hunter who gains is Dustless. It really makes Sengoku's stomach ache and tired of dealing with it. He has been in the position of Fleet Admiral for some time, but he has no achievements to speak of. It is inevitable that people will gossip about him. Not only that, the establishment of Shichibukai is a manifestation of his incompetence. If the Marine has real ability, there is no need to establish this deformed organization composed entirely of pirates to suppress pirates. Eat inside and betray outside. Princess Odoheim snorted. As a Tenryubito of the world government, he secretly fought against the world conquest and the Marine. What is this if not eating inside and betraying outside? Hearing this, Dustless's face did not change. He never felt that he was teammates with the government or the Marine in the trenches. He is afraid that the Marine is the same. The two are completely different from each other. It is naturally impossible to eat inside and betray outside. At the end of the day, Dustless was just a master of both the underworld and underworld. Whether it is the Marine or the government, in the eyes of Dustless, they are the same kind of people. No one is right and no one is wrong. The only one who can really judge whether they are righteous or evil is the final winner. Since you took the initiative to make a move, then I can only return the favor. Test me? I can only passively fight back. The hostility in his eyes disappeared in a flash. Dustless smiled. It would be impolite not to return the favor. On the blue sea surface, the salty sea breeze blew, and the reflection of dozens of naval warships could be seen on the surface of the water. The unique flag and the unique silhouette of the warships could only be seen in the navy. Sakasuji's entire body was wrapped up so tightly that only his bronze cheeks could be seen. His old face, however, looked extremely ugly. The hostility in his old eyes was clearly visible. Bastard! The massive fist easily punched through the deck, leaving a scorching red fist print. Sakasuji was like a human-shaped weapon that only knew how to kill. Its entire body was suffused with an oppressive aura, causing the entire ship to heat up for no reason, the temperature instantly rising dozens of times. The magma fruit was extraordinarily powerful, and it wasn't hard to see that Sakasuji had reached the pinnacle of perfection in its application and development. Akainu's eyes gloomily looked at the handcuffed man in the distance with pale skin. Akainu was extremely aggrieved, and his body uncontrollably erupted hot magma, burning through and melting the deck. Let me go. Do you know who's protecting me now? Come and untie this grandpa. Arrogant, condescending screams suddenly sounded. Looking in the direction of the voice, it was Kaiser who was locked up by Seastone. In fact, when Dustless called, Kaiser was already captured by Sakasuji and was on the way to the headquarters. Kaiser clearly heard the conversation between Sakasuji and Dustless in the Den Mushi. Release him from Seastone's handcuffs. His old face twitched. Even if he was unwilling, Sakasuji was powerless to change the reality. He wasn't an idiot. On the surface he may look like a brute who only knows how to use force, but in fact he's a meticulous person. Dustless's words in the Den Mushi already hinted that Kaiser was his subordinate. It can also be speculated that unscrupulously attacking Kaiser's opponent will immediately be met with the fiercest retaliation from Dustless. The soldiers on the warship looked at each other and stepped forward to release Kaiser's handcuffs. Sakasuji's will is above everything, and going against him is a dead end. Pack up your things and get out of here before I go back on my word. Waving his hand, Sakasuji issued the expulsion order. He suddenly felt that he was the most aggrieved vice admiral in history. There was nothing more ironic than releasing the enemy he captured with his own hands intact. After communicating with Dustless, he contacted Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Releasing Kaiser was Sengoku's order, and Sakasuji couldn't do anything. In the end, the Marine Headquarters is a department of the world government, and the world government serves the celestial dragons, and Dustless's identity is unusual, and falling out with him would be a great loss to the Marine. After careful consideration, Sengoku chose to compromise. Caesar was just an unknown clown. It was not worth losing Dustless, a trump card that could change the world situation for him. Sakasuji is now just a vice admiral, and it seems like he has unlimited potential. He has a high chance of becoming an admiral in the future, but that's a matter of the future. He is strong, but there are many people stronger than him in this world. Even if he becomes an admiral in the future, it's not a big deal. Chapter 561. The crystal-clear ice sculpture turned into a 10-meter-tall ice wall, but as soon as it got close to Marmarin, Kuzan easily froze it with his Frost Ice Fruits ability, turning it into a towering ice wall that blocked out the sunlight. The entire Marmarin was covered in a cold, dark shadow, and the sun was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps as long as Kazan's Akiji was late, Marin would be swallowed up and annihilated by this huge wave, and the people who could survive on the island would be few, and all the ability users would definitely fall. Oh, this is really terrible. They are going to destroy our marine. Is it possible that Whitebeard has personally come to our door? Borsellino, Kazuru, who was wearing a yellow striped suit, widened his eyes and tried his best to hide his calmness. But even so, from his slightly twitching lips, it was clear that Borsellino's heart was abnormally throbbing. When encountering seawater, the one who had the least ability to fight back was the Devil Fruit ability user. Yasukani no Magatama. His tall body turned into a beam of light that shot into the sky. Looking down at this huge ice wall, Borsellino's eyes shone with a cold light. A dazzling light condensed between his hands, covering an area so large that it made one's scalp go numb. Whoosh! After brewing for a while, the flashes that filled the sky finally came down in an instant. The destructive light waves played out a gorgeous scene. The iceberg that was as hard as steel collapsed in an instant. Countless holes appeared, densely packed and disorderly like a beehive. The warm sun shone through these holes. Boom! The towering iceberg gradually collapsed and was annihilated, until finally it turned into ice debris and shattered, and the warm sun once again enveloped the entire Marlindo. The Marines on the entire island took a deep breath of relief. At that moment, they thought that they had stepped into the legendary paradise. The younger generation will replace the older generation. These young people will have a bright future. In the Fleet Admiral's office, Fleet Admiral Sengoku nodded with relief. The current situation of the Marine is quite embarrassing. The Admirals, the Marine Headquarters' most powerful force in the world, are now in a state of discontinuity. The original Admiral Z has retired, Garp refused to be promoted to an Admiral again and again, and the former Admiral Sengoku has been promoted to Fleet Admiral. Now they can only rely on the evil organization Shichibukai, and promise them the legitimacy of their existence while using them to suppress other pirates around the world. By the way, the tsunami just now seems to have nothing to do with Whitebeard. Boom! Garp's slightly doubtful voice hasn't fallen, and the entire Marlindo trembled again. The intensity of the tremors was more frequent than before, and the tremors were more clear. Even Sengoku and Garp's bodies were shaking rhythmically with this frequency. Ka. Marlindo's ground also had narrow cracks, which was affected by the source of the tremors. It continued to expand and extend, and it showed signs of swallowing the entire island. Boom 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 boom. Raising his head, he saw a wave that was even larger than the one before. It was so terrifying that it almost covered the entire sky. The entire world was filled with despair and there was no sign of life at all. At the very least, in the eyes of Marlin's Marines, what was reflected was pure despair. Is it him? Sengoku's heart was in his throat, and it was extremely difficult for him to breathe. His eyes were gray and he was 100% sure that if the Marine Headquarters was hit, it would definitely be uprooted. Garp's face was also blue, and his iron fist was clenched tightly. He looked at Sengoku, and the two did not hesitate to break out of the window and attack the fierce waves. Renkyaku. His powerful right leg swept forward and a huge silver ray of light whizzed out. The swift and awe-inspiring ray of light instantly split apart the monstrous waves. The power of the cold ray of light was beyond imagination. It contained some kind of mysterious power, and even the sea didn't dare to easily heal it. Boom! Fleet Admiral Sengoku's golden light shone brightly and turned into a terrible golden Buddha. He condensed a key shield in his palm and a powerful impact flew out. The boundless waves were torn apart by the two of them, but it was not enough to completely destroy it. They could only keep the Marine headquarters safe and sound. The fierce waves were suppressed by the joint efforts of the two. The tsunami passed by, and the cracks that were torn open were just enough to accommodate Marlin and Methreya. It's not Whitebeard. Looking at the monstrous waves passing behind him, Garp was cold, and at the same time, he could assert that it was not Whitebeard. A figure had appeared in his eyes. Indeed. Sengoku nodded with an ugly face. Whitebeard had no reason to attack the Marine headquarters. Thinking of the people he had recently offended, only Dustless could do the same. He's deliberately demonstrating, Garp. With a bitter face, Sengoku became a lot older in an instant. The roaring waves directly swallowed the island behind them and completely erased it from the world forever. Sengoku's eyes were filled with regret. His forehead and temples oozed a little cold sweat. Fortunately, Sakazuki did not act rashly. This is not a demonstration but a warning. If there is a next time, the Marine headquarters will end up in the same way as those sunken islands. Garp said gloomily, his face was gloomy, and the clenched fist in his hand was relaxed. The reason why it was so easy to break the wave attack, there is no doubt that Dustless deliberately let him go. Otherwise, according to his strength, he could use some more shocking abilities to destroy and crush Marlindo. This is just a disguised warning, and it's also a naked slap to Sengoku's old face. It quietly told Fleet Admiral Sengoku a simple and clear meaning: if there is a next time, Marlindo will be erased. Chapter 562. His eyes narrowed and the light from his eyes was extremely sharp. The feeling of déjà vu is not a lie. His eyes finally fell on the young man in the black coat, and glanced at the pigeon on his shoulder. Dustless's eyes flashed. It turns out to be them. No wonder I felt they were familiar. Wu Chen's face revealed an untraceable arc. He already knew the origin and identity of these people. The secret spy agency of the world government, CP9. However, this group of people was much younger than they were in the future. Dustless didn't recognize them at first glance. Seeing Lucci's strange dress and the pigeon on his shoulder, he suddenly recognized them. Frowning slightly, Dustless didn't remember interacting with these people. While Dustless was looking at the CP9, these young CP9 members also quietly peeked at Dustless, and then looked at the celestial dragons foaming at the mouth, and their faces were moved. They had long heard that Dustless was a different kind of celestial dragons, and today they saw it with their own eyes. Louis South, Saint, let us deal with these celestial dragons. As the leader of the team, Lucci bowed slightly, and then said in a respectful tone. Dustless was silent when he heard the words, and his deep eyes turned around several people, as if he was planning something, and his eyes flashed with a strange luster. Seeing Dustless was silent, Lucci gave Kaku a look. The latter nodded slightly, and then walked toward the celestial dragons lying on the ground, and the disgust in his eyes disappeared. No matter who in the world, they don't have a good impression of celestial dragons, even if they are members of the government. When Kaku was about to drag this group of celestial dragons away, a black shadow suddenly attacked. The speed was as fast as lightning, and the naked eye could only see a fleeting afterimage. Kaku did not hesitate to block with his arms in front of him, and his whole body tensed, and his flesh turned into an invisible armor, extremely hard, resisting the incoming shadow. Bang! The powerful force was beyond imagination, and Kaku was instantly sent flying backward. He retreated a distance of 3 feet before he could stop. His face was pale and his arms were trembling uncontrollably. Who the hell are you? Staring at Hancock, Kaku suppressed the anger in his heart and asked with an ugly face. The strength of this young woman dressed as a maid was unexpectedly strong. The young master didn't agree to your conditions. Naturally, you can't take this person away. A cold voice came from Hancock's mouth. Hancock said expressionlessly. These CP9 are obviously trying to fish in troubled waters. Dustless remained silent from beginning to end. He neither agreed nor denied. Hancock, who had been with Dustless all the time, knew that Dustless was actually rejecting them. If you dare to attack again, it won't be so simple. Staring at Kaku, Hancock's silky eyes were replaced by coldness, and the warning and contempt in her tone were obvious. The strength of these CP9 is not enough. Rob Lucci and others' faces were gloomy, and their brows were wrinkled, and their fists were uncontrollably clenched. They have already lowered their posture, but they didn't expect Dustless to be so inhumane. Not only did he not give them any face, but he also took the opportunity to slap them in the face. Looking at Dustless's slightly smiling eyes, all the members of the CP9 loosened their fists at the same time. Putting aside the gap between their identities, Dustless's bottomless strength made them unable to compete with him. All of them together, even the little maid named Hancock, may not be able to defeat him. And the felony of attacking a celestial dragon is enough for them to go to jail for a lifetime. You know what's good for you? Hancock glanced at the CP9 members, and then she stood back to Dustless. Dustless looked at them with interest, and he nodded secretly. These people are young, but their strength is really good. Perhaps they are not at the peak state like they will be in the future, but they are not far from it. You are the guests of the government, and this trivial matter will be handled by Hancock. His eyes swept over the CP9 members. Dustless smiled, and his eyes finally fell on Lucci, pointing to the fainted Tenryubito below. If you urgently need to recover them, just go out and wait. In the end, Wu Qin recovered his usual calm expression. His expression was full of indifference, and his cold tone didn't leave any room for retreat. Then he closed his eyes and completely ignored these people. The CP9 members suddenly stiffened, and their eyes were faintly burning. Recover? What do you think we are doing? We are the secret spies of the world government, not the waste recovery manager of the garbage station. The corners of their mouths twitched violently, and the CP9 members almost vomited blood. Dustless's eyes were like looking at a mouse, which made them speechless and tangled. Their lungs were burning with fire, but they couldn't vent it. The fire went straight to the brain along the meridians of the body, burning their reason. In the past, when they performed tasks, almost all of them went smoothly, and they crushed the other side with absolute strength, but this task was unexpected. In terms of strength, they can't even beat the other side's maid, and in terms of background, they are even worse. The essence of the existence of the world government is to work for the celestial dragon. Especially Wu Chen's teasing and mocking gaze, it made them feel a few hundred times worse than eating 5 kilograms of flies. They could only lower their heads and not dare to meet Wu Chen's gaze, fearing that they would be violently beaten up by the other party if they were impulsive. In that case, goodbye. The CP9 members once again bowed to Dustless, and then left with a pale face, waiting for Hancock to clean up the celestial dragon, and then they will recover. Even if they are unwilling, they can only do this. Chapter 563. The CP9 group quietly retreated, and the expression of wanting to attack but not daring to break out made Hancock laugh again and again. The World Government Spy Agency directly under Dustless was like a clown in front of him, and they couldn't raise their heads at all. They had no dignity and could only escape. Seeing that the CP9 group completely disappeared, Hancock ran out to find bodyguards to drag the group of Tenryubito out. Although the bodyguards were full of fear, throwing Tenryubito into the garbage dump was not a small crime. Because of Dustless's terrifying power, they still chose to do it. At least the Tenryubito will find trouble in the future. Disobeying Dustless now may result in blood splashing on the spot. In the dark, Dustless's face gradually converged and turned into monotonous ridicule. His deep black eyes were full of wisdom, and he had already guessed why the CP9 suddenly visited. Master, there is something wrong with them? Hancock stood beside Dustless and wondered. She always felt that these people had other plans, but she couldn't tell the specifics. It was not reasonable for them to go back empty-handed. And their hands are too long. CP9 is only an official of the world government, and the object of their specific service seems to be only CP0. Hancock was puzzled. Dustless had told her these things before. Dustless just smiled mysteriously when he heard the words, and his knuckles rhythmically tapped on the table. He was slightly surprised and then nodded gently. He didn't expect Hancock to see the trick. Perhaps because Hancock can be an outsider, she can observe the overall development from an observer's point of view, and then get alternative indirect information. It's very simple because they want to get valuable things from me, but the CP9 is too arrogant. Even their behind-the-scenes boss can't do it, let alone these small people. Shaking his head contemptuously, Dustless sneered. The smile on his face suddenly froze. Dustless raised his head and stared at the dark corridor. He suddenly felt a pair of eyes peeking at them from there. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing there. The gloomy space maintained a deathly stillness from beginning to end. There was no change at all. It was as quiet as stagnant water. Was it an illusion? Dustless wondered. His perception rarely made mistakes, and his accuracy had even reached the level of 100%. Damn stupid cow, do you think you can close the gap between us with the devil fruit? Naive and ignorant. Wu Qin sneered inwardly with a sneer on his face. He suddenly remembered a member of the CP9 named Blueno. He is a paramecia door fruit user. His ability is that any object he touches will turn into a door and can be opened. He can open the door through air and then achieve incredible space jumping ability. In short, it could barely be considered a heaven-defying ability. You want to use the ability of the devil fruit to close the gap in strength and use it to spy on intelligence. It's a good idea, but you chose the wrong target. Dustless smiled and was about to kill Blueno on the spot. His eyes flashed, and the majestic chakra gathered in his body instantly disappeared. Such a good chess piece can be used in the opposite way. Dustless-sama, what is their purpose? Seeing Dustless's strange silence, Hancock asked puzzledly. She can conclude that the purpose of the CP9 is not simple, and there is an unknown conspiracy. That's for sure. Hearing this, Dustless rubbed his throat and deliberately raised his voice, saying, "The purpose of this group of people is very simple. It's estimated that they are here to spy on the design of Pluton. A few idiots want to take the design from me." "Is that so?" Hancock's nose wrinkled slightly, and her clear eyes looked at Dustless suspiciously. In the blink of an eye, Dustless gave her a kind of earth-shaking change as if he was a different person. Of course, there is more than one design of Pluton in this world. The original Pluton was designed and built by Water 7, so they should have a backup design in their hands. Wu Qin explained with certainty. His resolute tone was convincing. The original founders of Pluto were the craftsmen of Water 7, so it was understandable that such a confidential design was left behind. But that's the case. Hancock's eyes flashed as if she just woke up from a dream. Since Water 7 was the base for the creation of Pluton, it's reasonable to leave behind the design of Pluton. Dustless chatted casually for a while, and the words fell into Blueno's hands word for word. What kind of joke is this? That's the design of Pluto. How could it be so easy to get the source of the information? I heard from the other 5 that Louis South's strength has already reached the peak of perfection. If it's so easy to get the information, what's the difference between him and those newbies? In the dark promenade, CP9 member Kaku was the first to question loudly. Perhaps there is indeed information about Pluton in Water 7, but it's ridiculous that it's so easy to spy on the source of the information. Although Blueno's fruit ability is really amazing, it can't dispel his doubts. A group of CP9 members were hesitant. Although Blueno used this ability to spy on a lot of confidential information, this time his opponent was Dustless, who was feared by the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. They always felt that it was too childish. Why is it impossible? That man sneered at us before and didn't look at us seriously. People make mistakes and horses stumble. It's normal for me to spy on him when he's full of success. Blueno's face turned red as he saw his teammates looking at him suspiciously. Let's report to the 5 elders. Lucci, who has been silent from the beginning, said conservatively. Chapter 564. Early the next morning, the morning wind was mighty and there were no clouds in the sky. Princess Odoheim was ordered by Dustless to return to the Fishman Island early. This was also the result of her pleading. Of course, it was also her last trip to the Fishman Island. In addition, she also had a special task given to her by Dustless. The Fishman Island had long been regarded as a forbidden place by Wu Qin. Whitebeard had unscrupulously occupied the island. How could Wu Qin just watch the duck that was about to reach his mouth disappear without a trace? Especially that old guy had a close relationship with the former pirate king Joel D. Roger. There was a great possibility that he would get the news of the ancient weapon Poseidon from Roger. Whitebeard's ambition has to be guarded against. Although the surface and Akagami, red hair, are righteous people, it is undeniable that he is a big pirate king as cunning as a rabbit. Roger and Shiki of the 3 legendary pirates have already fallen, and now only Whitebeard is performing. Dustless-sama, Whitebeard's fleet only has a small number of personnel stationed on the Fishman Island, which does not constitute a substantial threat. The people of the Whitebeard pirates are also quite educated, at least they didn't do such things as robbing. White Zetsu explained, and his words showed admiration for Whitebeard. He is afraid that only the Whitebeard pirates can restrain the inferior pirates to such an obedient level. Hearing that Whitebeard is not on the Fishman Island, Dustless's heart relaxed. At least he doesn't have the idea of the ancient weapon Poseidon. What about the traces of the CP9 brats yesterday? They should have gone to report to Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Wearing pajamas, sitting leisurely on the sofa, Dustless asked calmly. Brats? Hearing this, White Zetsu was stunned at first, and then understood that Dustless was talking about the CP9. He said, they didn't. They seemed to have gathered to discuss it yesterday, but they didn't say anything after discussing it all night. It is estimated that they went to Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, or Commander Kong to make a choice. White Zetsu said truthfully, although he didn't know why he cared about a few minions, he still collected information seriously. This kind of thing is beyond the scope of what the CP9 can do. It can only be solved by finding a higher-level person. Commander Kong and Gorosei are the best candidates. That doesn't matter. It's the same no matter who knows about the 5 Honored Stars or Commander Kong. Moreover, if I'm not wrong, the results of their actions should be the same. Dustless smiled calmly. He had already guessed the decision of the 5 Honored Stars. On the avenue of Mariehua, all the members of the CP9 looked very unnatural. It's not that they suspected Blueno. They trained together when they were children and they were already honest with each other. Chapter 565. 3 days later in the system world. In the pavilion, Dustless's expression was different from before. There was a rare look of anxiety and impatience on his face, and his calm eyes also splashed out ripples and waves. His heart also became restless. I couldn't tell that you would actually lose your composure over this kind of thing. The ethereal celestial voice spread, and the system consciousness Ling-Er looked at Dustless in surprise. Dustless gave people the feeling that he was an emotionless robot. Just like today, he showed an anxious expression from time to time, who knows how many times in his life. Could it be that you think I'm a stone with a heart of stone? I'm also a person of flesh and blood. Dustless stared at Ling-Er in annoyance and said impatiently. Around dawn, System Ling-Er told Dustless that Huiji's due date had arrived. Since then, his heart had not been at ease and it was in his throat like the waves of the sea, sometimes high and sometimes low. His Tao heart that was as immovable as a rock also began to loosen. Humans were not plants and could not be emotionless. Although Dustless's temperament was unusually cold, he was not a stubborn stone that did not understand the affairs of the world. He always maintained concern for his own people, but he who was not good with words had always hidden this sincere feeling in his heart, and only silently guarded it. There was no need to make it known to everyone. There was a saying that everything was interconnected, and some things did not need to be explained at all. On the contrary, sometimes things would go in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme, and the more one explained, the darker it would become. Everything was fine as long as one let nature take its course. System Ling-Er looked at Dustless with a smile, with an understanding attitude. As a father for the first time, it was normal for him to feel a little nervous. After all, this was also the first time Dustless experienced this. Anyway, I rarely see such an anxious expression on your face. In my impression, this is the first time I've seen you. A light voice with loneliness and sadness came from behind, like a supreme celestial voice, soothing one's heart. However, at this moment, Dustless was unable to be happy. His face stiffened with a hint of guilt. Looking back, he saw Otsutsuki Hiruo, whom he hadn't seen for a while. At this moment, she looked a little sad. Her face was as pale as the snow in the winter. Her face was full of loneliness. She clenched her silver teeth, and the corners of her mouth were extremely bitter. There were even some obvious cracks. I'm really sorry. The corners of Dustless's mouth wriggled. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife, and he was speechless and extremely guilty. He had spent the most time with Yuluo. The latter had always wanted to have a child, but to this day she still couldn't fulfill her wish. Instead, it was Huey who came later who got there first. I don't want you to. Glancing at Dustless in disappointment, Yuluo's eyes were dim and lifeless. Her silvery hair had also become much whiter. Her entire body was emitting an extremely powerless feeling of hesitation and loss. Her heavenly beauty gave others the feeling that she had become much older in an instant. Seeing this, Dustless's heart clenched, and he was just about to persuade her when the clear and melodious cry of a child resounded. Woo! Dustless was stunned. Looking at Kagaya's delivery room, his body turned into a gust of wind and rushed forward. Breaking the door and entering, a stunning woman with golden hair was reflected in Dustless's eyes. She was dressed quite casually with light makeup and no makeup, and her skin was as white as snow. She didn't need to be deliberately dressed up. Her whole person was natural and unrestrained, giving people a very magnanimous and natural feeling. Looking around, it was Tsunade with golden hair. As a medical ninja, she knew much more than Dustless, and the task of delivering the baby inevitably fell on her. At this moment, Tsunade was holding a little doll carved out of jade in her hand. Its black eyes were moving nimbly, and its delicate skin was as white as snow. It was no different from Kagaya, and there were two cute horns on its head. Staring blankly at the tender child in Tsunade's arms, Dustless spontaneously felt a sense of blood connection, and an inexplicable special force connected him and the baby in swaddling clothes. Yaya, it seemed that it also felt a sense of intimacy with Dustless, and the tender baby waved at Dustless with its fangs and claws. Its dark eyes were sparkling with tears, and it was anxious to get out of Tsunade's arms. It looked like it was about to cry, and it evoked the sympathy and pity that had disappeared for countless years in Dustless's heart. Heartless little brat, wasting so much of my energy. You forgot about the midwife when you saw your father. Tsunade rolled her eyes and angrily handed the baby in her arms to Dustless. She put her hands on her hips and shouted, "This heartless little girl is as heartless as you. No wonder you are father and daughter. You don't know how to express your gratitude to me. After all, I was the one who delivered the baby. Even if there is no credit, there should be hard work." Tsunade complained with dissatisfaction. This little girl was too much. She cried and made a fuss in her arms, but when she was in Dustless's hands, she immediately smiled. Seeing that Dustless and the baby in his arms were so close, Tsunade's calm eyes were filled with jealousy. Then she walked to Dustless's side, and her slender fingers gently pinched the little girl's little face and teased, "Is it a girl?" Remembering what Tsunade said before, he subconsciously looked down at the lower body. Sure enough, as Tsunade said, the future will definitely be a beautiful young lady. Quietly looking at the little girl's dark pupils, Dustless was confused. He felt that this day came unexpectedly, and he didn't even do the most basic preparation. When he was daydreaming, he suddenly felt a wet face, and his empty thoughts suddenly came back to him. Paji. In the twinkling of an eye, Wu Chen's face was left with the little girl's mouth mark, which was full of water stains. Wu Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In his life, it was the first time that his face was attacked by others. This little girl is very clever. Tsunade's eyes widened, and her watery eyes looked at the little girl in surprise. For a moment, she caught a cunning look that didn't belong to her age from those black eyes. "Nonsense, don't you know whose flesh and blood you are?" Hearing this, Dustless's face was full of pride, and his high tone was filled with endless pride. This little girl can be seen from her eyes that she is a clever little girl. It's my fault that my genes are too strong, and so is my daughter. Chapter 566. Looking at the radiant and spirited Dustless, Tsunade was also filled with emotion for a while. After Dustless's former enemies saw his expression, they would probably crawl out of hell unwillingly. In his impression, Dustless was just a villain who did not commit any of the 10 evils. "Bring it over for me to see." A weak and light voice spread out and entered the ears of Dustless and Tsunade. Turning their heads, the owner of this weak voice was Kagaya, who was sweating all over. At this moment, her face was pale, revealing a sense of helplessness from her soul. The birth of Smarty had almost exhausted all the effort she had accumulated in her life. Compared to Dustless, who only worried but didn't put in any effort, Huey had sacrificed too much. "Yaya?" Little Smarty's clear eyes looked at Huey G and blinked. From Huey G's kind eyes, she caught a glimpse of love and gentleness. The immature but powerful body twisted again, and he raised his thin arms and threw himself into Kagaya's arms. Obviously he was tired of Dustless. "Puchi." Tsunade couldn't help laughing when she saw this scene. Her delicate face bloomed with a beautiful smile, and her bell-like laughter was pleasant to listen to. She teased Dustless with interest. "You forgot your father when you had your mother. It seems that you are just like that. It is the nature of babies to look for their mother's care." Handing the child in his hand to Kagaya, Dustless did not deny Tsunade's words. It was indeed as she said. "It's been hard on you." Staring at Kagaya with complex gratitude, Dustless's tone was as heavy as Mount Tai, and his bright eyes looked at Kagaya. His words were completely from the bottom of his heart, and there was no hypocrisy. It's okay, you can recover after a while. Taking the immature baby in Dustless's hand, Kagaya nodded slightly with a sweet smile on her face. She can naturally feel Dustless's sincerity. A sincere greeting was far more useful than thousands of hypocritical sweet words. Speaking of which, what's this little girl's name? Her eyes fell on Dustless's body. Tsunade frowned and asked. The little clever boy came and went for a short time, but after a long time, it sounded very harsh. Isn't that obvious? Dustless rolled his eyes at Tsunade and said bluntly, children follow their father's surname. This is a principle that has never changed since ancient times. Of course, it's called Uchiha. Suddenly, two cold eyes locked on him. Wuchen's words came to an abrupt end. One of them was Kagaya, and the other was Otsutsuki Haruo, who was rushing over. It's really strange. These two women's tempers have always been at odds. It's rare for them to have the same opinion today. Dustless thought helplessly in his heart. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel extremely conflicted. He had already guessed that the naming process, which should have been smooth, was the most difficult process. I think the surname should be Otsutsuki. The Uchiha surname is indeed glorious, but it's already a thing of the past. Now everything has changed and I'm in a foreign country. All in all, there's no need to respect those ridiculous truths. Glancing at Dustless, Haruo said her intention, and the determination in her eyes was unshakable. What you said is true. Kagaya nodded towards Dustless to express her point of view. From the beginning to the end, Kagaya has maintained a contemptuous attitude towards Uchiha. It's just a branch of Otsutsuki, and as Haruo said before, there is no need to adhere to the rules in a foreign country. Yaiya, seeing that she was ignored, the little girl's inarticulate voice sounded. She seemed to hear the conversation between several people and quite agreed with Haruo's statement. Seeing this, Dustless's forehead was full of black lines. Dustless can't change the principles summarized by the ancient sages at will, and the idea of children following their father's surname has been deeply ingrained. It's impossible to change Dustless easily. Ahem, clearing his throat, Dustless chuckled and said, it doesn't matter. I am a very democratic person. What the surname is, it will be decided by her in the future. Pointing to the baby in Kagaya's arms, Dustless said, if you are democratic, you should vote. Looking at Dustless with disdain, Tsunade said contemptuously. She knew that Dustless deliberately played Taiji Fist to fool her. In the future, as long as she is tempted a little, this little girl may change sides and jump into Dustless's arms. Children are always naive. Up to you. Huey clearly didn't want to dwell on such a question. She just focused on teasing the red-faced smarty, occasionally letting out crisp laughter. Everyone, including Dustless and Yulua Tsuna, looked at the scene in front of them harmoniously. When the cold Kagaya revealed this kind face, it was no less than the sun rising from the south. She will be called Yushi from now on. After a moment of silence, Wuchen gave him a name. It was not appropriate to call him that. Even if he didn't have a surname, he needed a name. Otsutsuki Suki or Uchiha Suki. Sounds good, but is there any special meaning? Yuluo nodded in satisfaction after trying to read it 2 or 3 times. Then he turned to Dustless and asked expectantly. This name was indeed not bad and sounded quite elegant. Huiji also hummed the new name of Little Smarty. After a while, she revealed a knowing smile. It seemed that she was quite satisfied with the name Dustless gave her. However, the baby in her arms puffed up her cheeks and bared her fangs at Dustless. She seemed to be extremely dissatisfied, but her protest was ignored by everyone. Meaning? Is this necessary? Just say it smoothly. Dustless was speechless by Yuluo's question, and he went straight to the point. After the words fell, even Kagaya stared at Dustless with dissatisfaction. The name has been the most important thing since ancient times. She didn't expect Dustless to be so perfunctory. Dustless felt as if he had been shot even though he was lying down. Only then did he suddenly remember that compared to him, a surpasser from the 3rd dimension, people like Kagaya were still considered old antiques. It was indeed difficult for him to accept the idea of transcending dimensions. Chapter 567. There was an insurmountable gap between the thinking of modern people and ancient people. It was impossible for them to accept Dustless's thinking ability in a short period of time. After hundreds and thousands of years of changes, the generation gap was not something that could be ignored. Fortunately, after a while of talking, Kagaya and the others reluctantly accepted Dustless's proposed name, just as Dustless explained before. The name was not important, the most important thing was to communicate with each other. The key was the meaning. Although the explanation was extremely far-fetched, after some coaxing and pestering, the girls nodded in agreement. Dustless originally wanted to let Kagaya and her daughter see the outside world. Being trapped in the system space for a long time was not a long-term solution, but Kagaya unexpectedly refused. The reason was quite simple. With the addition of the little life form Yushi, Huey's boring life was no longer monotonous. Compared to before, it was much more colorful and interesting. Her ambition that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth slowly faded. Forget it. Looking at the mother and daughter entangled in harmony with each other, Dustless also stopped the plan to take little Yueshi out. This was too cruel and unfair to Kagaya, and Dustless did not have the skills to take care of children. It was enough to let her live quietly and peacefully. You are too easily satisfied. Also, my dream is still a bubble. Seeing Dustless's complacent expression, Yulua was quite dissatisfied. She did not hide the blame in her tone. The plan in her mind to give birth to a nest of children had not been realized yet. Just go with the flow. You also know that this kind of thing depends on fate. In short, you can't blame me. Dustless shrugged, with an expression that had nothing to do with him. Yuluo's mouth twitched and gloomily stared at Dustless. No one was an idiot. Dustless's words implied that there was a problem with her body. She wanted to refute, but there was no way to refute. Dustless and Kagaya hit the mark, and countless times with her, there was no movement at all. This had already quietly explained everything. This is an illness. It has to be treated. Dustless gently patted Yuluo's shoulder and said with a smile. The ridicule in his tone was not concealed at all. Following which, his body dissipated without any warning like a breeze, forever disappearing from this world. In an instant he disappeared without a trace, and his aura was completely gone. Warm sunlight poured down from the 9 heavens. The whole world was bathed in the scorching sun. It was full of vitality and vitality. It made people temporarily forget that this was an extremely distorted world. Coincidentally, some people were not used to this warm sun. The Akagami, red hair, pirates who had escaped from death, were desolate and bleak. The momentum that swept the sea in the past was gone with the wind. The battleships docked at the coast were almost destroyed. Looking at it, it was full of traces of the waves. In the past, the Akagami, red hair, pirates were domineering, traversing the 4 seas, sweeping the new world and stepping on the top of the Yonko 4 emperors. Now only a few of them were left. It was exactly the same as the saying, when one reaches the pinnacle of prosperity, one will inevitably decline. It was all because of that man's single thought that brought disaster to his name. Years of dreams, painstaking efforts, all turned into nothing in an instant. He was even reduced to a state where he was about to be erased. New world. I will definitely come back again. The powerful oath resounded through the sky. Akagami, red hair, Shanks then left with the remaining crew members, and the lonely shadow gradually lengthened and disappeared on the sea. Dustless, the originator of the Akagami, red hair, pirates, was extremely proud. People were in high spirits when they were happy, and sometimes he would show a knowing smile. This made Hancock think that the sun had emerged from the bottom of the sea. On the balcony, Dustless was lying on the couch. The birth of Little Moon She really made him in a good mood, and his mouth was humming a song involuntarily. He didn't even notice the sudden appearance of a figure. This time there may be a chance. Doflamingo's eyes squinted and he peeped at Dustless's expression without a trace. There was a smile on his face and he was still a wanted pirate. Although the position of Shichibukai was still a step away, it was only a short distance away. Dustless didn't help him add fuel to the fire, and it would be difficult for him to get to the top. In the near future, I will help you get the position of Shichibukai as soon as possible. We must seize the throne of King Dressrosa as soon as possible and drag the original Liku royal family down from the altar. Before Doflamingo could speak, Dustless spoke first, and his cold voice was filled with killing intent. It's true that we should speed up the pace. Caesar seems to have been caught by Sakazuki, but in the end, thanks to your help, the old boy would have to go to prison again. Doflamingo smiled flatteringly, and his tone was full of flattery, and he had completely given up the so-called dignity. It's not too late to pick up his dignity when his wings grow hard in the future. Now he's just a stray dog. The identity of the celestial dragons doesn't have much of a deterrent effect on the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. What's more, their Don Quixote family has no power of the celestial dragons. If they lose the protection of Dustless, they will die. It's not just him, Caesar is the same, so Doflamingo is unusually obedient. Glancing at Doflamingo faintly, Dustless didn't say anything. It was the opposite of the way he met Hancock before. In the face of these subordinates who are not subordinates, the necessary oppression is still necessary. The reason why he chose to let Doflamingo sit on the Shichibukai in advance is entirely because Caesar's trace is exposed. The construction of Pluton must have a quiet environment. Only after Doflamingo sits on the Shichibukai, he can also seek the king's position of Dressrosa to shelter Caesar. What are the specific steps? Lowering his posture, Doflamingo asked in a low voice. It's very simple. Lead your pirate group to destroy everything. The loss is enough to make the Marines unable to bear it. At that time they will naturally come to you to compromise. It doesn't matter if it's big. Behind me is your foothold. The simplest and most effective way is to be rude and direct. This is the truth that will never change. Chapter 568. Getting the promise he dreamed of, Doflamingo left Mariehua with a wild laugh, and the unscrupulous laughter seemed to mock the helpless and angry look of the Navy after being attacked by him. In the dark, Doflamingo has seen the old face of Fleet Admiral Sengoku. On the balcony, Dustless glanced indifferently at the battleship sailing away, and he could even see that Doflamingo was standing on the deck. "Master, aren't you spoiling him too much?" Hancock, dressed in a maid's uniform, came quietly and gently massaged Dustless's shoulders on both sides, and the technique was extremely accurate. Doflamingo is ambitious like a wolf or a tiger, and it is common for dogs to bite their masters in the end. Dustless closed his eyes comfortably and enjoyed it comfortably. After a while, Hancock's massage skills improved by leaps and bounds, and the fatigue on both sides of his shoulders was swept away. "Don't worry, it's just a small pawn." Hearing this, Dustless replied casually, and his indifferent tone obviously never put Doflamingo in his heart. No matter how beautiful the Monkey King's conspiracy is, even if it is flawless, under the shroud of the Five-Finger Mountain, he is always insignificant, just a tiny particle among hundreds of millions of floating particles. The consequence of a mere Tao wanting to shake the world was like a moth flying into a flame, seeking its own destruction. If he could be tactful, Dustless didn't mind continuing to raise Doflamingo. If he dared to resist, within a breath, Doflamingo's blood would splatter 3 feet, and his head would be taken. So there is no need to worry about it, just use it with contempt. What's more, that kid has been suppressed by me for so long, and the hidden wildness in his heart and the anger that has been accumulated for a long time in the past few days has released extraordinary destructive power. A mad dog that goes crazy. Sengoku will be troubled. Taking the crystal glass handed by Hancock, shaking the red liquid in it, Dustless then drank it, and the red residue left on the corner of his mouth combined with his gloomy face was particularly strange. He was the complete opposite of the sunny Dustless from before. Now he was like a demon in human skin. Dustless was able to put himself in the shoes of those who were truly loyal to him and treat them calmly. As for insignificant characters like Doflamingo, it was fine to throw him away when he had no value. Doflamingo was only temporarily attached to Dustless. In the future, when his wings were fully grown, he would leave him. When this chess piece no longer had any value, it would not be too late to kill him. After losing the restraint of Dustless, Doflamingo, the ferocious tiger beast, finally revealed its sharp fangs and devoured one Navy battleship after another. The bloody storm set off by Don Quixote swept across the world, and the entire Marine headquarters was covered with an unprecedented dark cloud. "Bastard, Doflamingo, this beast, one day I will tear him to pieces to vent the hatred in my heart." The angry Sengoku tore the information in his hand, his eyes were bloody red, and his whole body was releasing a huge oppressive aura, and the whole office was shaking. "Bah!" After swallowing confidential documents, the goat whined twice and fainted. Doflamingo was a celestial dragon. Even though the Don Quixote clan had given up the privilege of being a celestial dragon, Doflamingo was still a celestial dragon from the beginning to the end. This identity alone was enough to render them helpless, not to mention the mastermind behind him. This damn ant was obviously extremely fragile, but he always jumped around and ignored the Marine, and even smacked the Marine's face. Sengoku's feelings were self-evident. This was the feeling of having to suffer in silence, unable to voice out the bitterness. Boom. Kaka. Staring coldly at the proud and arrogant Doflamingo in the newspaper, Sengoku saw Doflamingo laughing at the Marine. He didn't even think about it. He condensed the original transparent air shield in his hand and directly shattered it, turning it into goose feather-like fluttering snow. Bang bang bang, the dull sound of knocking on the door made Sengoku frown. When did the Marine become so unruly? When he was about to verbally reprimand, a tall figure directly broke the door. That guy Z left Marin on a battleship. Without waiting for Sengoku to ask, Garp, who was wearing a dog head hat, said. Hearing this, Sengoku frowned deeply and his voice was hoarse and he said seriously, his students were slaughtered by that bastard Doflamingo yesterday. Maybe he went to find trouble with Doflamingo? Yesterday the Marine's ship unfortunately encountered Doflamingo, and almost all of them were killed and only a few escaped. With such deep hatred, how can Z swallow his anger? A few years ago, Z's wife and son were brutally killed by pirates. At that time, he hated pirates, and now the new hatred plus the old hatred aroused the flame in Z's heart. The destination of that guy's voyage is not the sea where Doflamingo is located. Garp shook his head. Sengoku suddenly looked at Garp with his pupils enlarged, and his old eyes were filled with awe-inspiring luster. A bad idea swept through his mind, and his fists were as big as a bucket. Looking at Sengoku's eyes, Garp nodded and said in a heavy tone, Z is likely to take the students who survived to Mariewa to question the man. Z knows that temporarily repelling Doflamingo won't solve the root of the problem. Only by completely stopping Royce South can he stop Doflamingo's plot against the Marine. But Z is a very intelligent and sensitive man. He shouldn't fight with him. So there is no need to worry. Garp said with uncertainty. He also had doubts about what he said, but he just hoped so. Sengoku smiled bitterly and regretted for a while. If he had given the position of 7 warlords of the sea to Doflamingo, there would not be such a situation. Chapter 569. Early in the morning 3 days later, the bloody storm set off by Doflamingo still continued. The fierce name of Heaven's Yiksha spread throughout the New World. Even small places like the Four Seas could hear his nickname. Countless Navy battleships were destroyed by him, and countless Navy soldiers were killed by him. Not only that, Doflamingo's claws also reached out to ordinary civilians. The Marine could only swallow their anger, not to mention these weak civilians. Therefore, the number of islands and towns destroyed by Doflamingo was more than the number of hands. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, who couldn't bear it, finally gave the title of Shichibukai to Doflamingo. Although he couldn't wait to tear him into pieces, he didn't dare to kill him. The name of Tenryubito was too terrible. The law did not allow the Marine to kill Tenryubito. Afterward, Doflamingo also became Shichibukai. On the Blue Sea, Marine battleships moved forward rapidly. The sea rippled and expanded to swallow the surrounding sea. Damn Doflamingo! Z's heavy roar sounded in the cabin. His hands slightly smashed the table in front of him. It was as easy as blowing air. Only in this way could he vent the burning flames in his heart. This is the so-called Marine. What kind of justice is this? Or is the definition of justice the winner is king and the loser is a bandit? Is this the justice I pursue? Z's eyes were dim. For the first time in his life he doubted his faith. Marine headquarters held the loud slogan of absolute justice all day long. But their inner nature was no different from those pirates. They were afraid of the strong bullying the weak. The strong preyed on the weak and the strong was respected. When the law of the jungle forced the word justice, the surface did not change but the inside was rotten. His beloved student was slaughtered by pirates. As the embodiment of justice, the Marine couldn't crusade against evil. Not only that, but now from the Marine's predicament to a large extent, they will collude with the so-called Shichibukai in the future. This is not the righteous Marine that Z pursued. It is contrary to his beliefs. In the past he was confident that the Marine has fallen into hell. Teacher. A haggard and weak voice came from outside the cabin. Z raised his head and pushed open the cabin door. A group of exhausted students were reflected in his eyes. His old eyes swept across the students one by one. Z lowered his head, his face full of guilt. In the end, I also chose to give in. I am not qualified to criticize Sengoku. Z said with a forced smile. Doflamingo acted recklessly, slaughtering the Marine Corps like slaughtering dogs. Countless soldiers were wailing and trembling under his hands. Z didn't stand up to arrest Doflamingo just like when his chess piece was killed, he chose to remain silent. Why did he choose to remain silent? There was no other reason. Doflamingo was a celestial dragon, and behind him was Lois South, a behemoth that could cover the sky with one hand. Z's thoughts of revenge were extinguished, and he continued to remain silent. Because they are celestial dragons. In this world, celestial dragons are synonymous with justice. The laws of the world are all made by them. Justice is judged by them. So is life and death. Those who resist their rule are the enemies of justice. In other words, the enemies of celestial dragons are the embodiment of evil. Z who believes that justice will prevail will certainly not resist celestial dragons. In today's world, celestial dragons have become a manifestation of justice. Only by respecting celestial dragons is justice. Resistance is evil. Such a ridiculous truth has deceived the world for more than 800 years, but no one can jump out of the nightmare created by justice. Until now, Z felt like it was a lifetime ago he suddenly woke up. The justice that I seek is sacred, not this kind of twisted justice that has been rewritten by others. Staring at the looming Mariehua in the clouds in the distance, Z's loud roar contained the firmness of a rock. The ruthlessness of celestial dragons is well known to the world. They are evil butchers dressed in the cloak of justice. They themselves are the dirtiest existence. The Marine is also an accomplice to evil. Z, who was a Marine admiral in the past, is no exception. Therefore, Z has an amazing conclusion. The most evil existence in the world is not pirates, nor is it the Yonko, 4 emperors, but the forces led by celestial dragons. They are the most evil existence in the world. In the name of hypocritical justice, their shadows cover the sky and the sun. The scope of slavery is more than an island and a small piece of the sea. The location of radiation is the whole world. Today, Z realized that compared to those pirates who chased their dreams, he who was loyal to the world government and loyal to celestial dragons in the past was more evil. In the early morning, Mariehua was filled with countless mist, looming in the clouds and mist, connecting the sky and the earth. It was beautiful. Mariehua is not only the headquarters of the world government, but also the gathering place of celestial dragons. It covers a large area and is difficult to estimate. Looking as far as the eye can see, Mariehua standing on the red line is spectacular. Looking at the world today, it is unique and its momentum is unique. The Marine battleship actually took the initiative to come to Mariehua. It's rare. His sharp eyes penetrated the heavy fog, and the galloping Marine battleship appeared in Dustless's eyes. After a glance, Dustless withdrew his gaze. He was very busy these days. Most of the time was spent in the world of the system. Accompanying Kagaya all day and playing with little Ueshi was boring, but it was also a good way to spend a long time. Just as he was about to get into the system world, the sound of the Den Den Mushi in his arms came into Dustless's ears. He frowned slightly and then took out the black Den Den Mushi. This is... Z, what is he looking for me for, or is it for Doflamingo? The doubts in his eyes turned into speculation. Dustless learned that Doflamingo recently killed many of Z's students. Chapter 570. Time slipped away unknowingly, and in the blink of an eye, 5 hours passed quietly. In the spacious and bright room, Dustless looked doubtful, and his deep black eyes restored indifference. He was sure that Z's visit was not a good thing. The weasel paying a visit to the chicken is not a good thing. Doflamingo's recent lawlessness, Dustless also heard a little about it. But in his view it was just a small fuss. The effect was negligible. Unexpectedly, Sengoku chose to compromise and agreed to Doflamingo's conditions and promised him the position of Shichibukai. I'm afraid that old guy is also tormented to the point that he can't stand it anymore. Dustless had some admiration for this clown Doflamingo. Doflamingo ambushed the Marines. Most of them were young and had good qualifications. Once these people grow up in the future, their room for improvement is infinite. Even 1 or 2 of them can become the mainstay of the Marines, turning into fertile soil to protect the towering tree of the Marines. However, Doflamingo had cut him in half at the waist and killed him mercilessly. More than 90% of the freshmen were taught by Z, and they get along with each other day and night. Their feelings must have reached a very deep level, and even reached a deep level of father and son. So that's how it is. You know it's useless to deal with Doflamingo, so you came to me. Giving up what's close at hand to seek what's far away. Wu Chen's gentle expression was full of contempt. He instantly understood Z's intention. But do you think it's useful to find me? Relying on your strength you want me to yield? That's a fantasy, Z. Frankly speaking, Dustless quite sympathized with him. He worked hard for the Marines all his life, and when his life was about to wither, it was his student Borsellino, Kazuru, who personally sent him to his death. The rise and fall of the Marines are caused by the Marines, and they are destroyed by the Marines. His feelings are pitiful, his actions are excusable, but his crime is punishable. Dustless sneered. A tall and broad figure walked in. He had purple hair and wore glasses. If one ignored the cold glint in his eyes, he was dressed quite elegantly. The two of them looked at each other. Because of sitting on the stairs, Dustless was taller than Z. Dustless was looking down at him. First of all, Z's aura was already at a disadvantage, which made him quite uncomfortable. I still remember that you are the honorary admiral of the Marines, so why did you choose to be the enemy of justice? Clenching his fists, countless blue veins were vaguely visible on his arms. Z coldly questioned. What Doflamingo did was the result of your indulgence and indifference. At the end of his speech, Z's eyes were emitting cold air. Towards Doflamingo, Z couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. Unless he directly killed him, he wouldn't be able to solve the problem. You came all the way here. Sit down and soothe your throat first. Pointing to the left side of the sofa, Dustless signaled Z to sit there. As for the cold questioning tone, he ignored it and quietly tasted the fragrant tea in his hand. As if nothing happened, Dustless was unusually quiet. This kind of indifference made Z's resentment towards Dustless soar. Justice. Z, you are not young anymore. All day long you still talk about justice. Sometimes I really feel like you are a child who hasn't grown up. Looking at Z, Wu Qin sneered and didn't hide his sarcasm. I think you are a child who hasn't grown up. You don't understand the essence of justice. Z's old face tightened. He didn't hesitate to show weakness. Then tell me your understanding of justice. I'm all ears. The corners of his mouth curled up with a hint of ridicule. That pair of deep eyes flashed with ridicule, as if he was sizing up a clown, looking down at Z from above. Their identities were suddenly reversed. Dustless was more like a deep audience, quietly waiting for the clown's performance on the stage. What kind of attitude is this? Z's tone raised a few decibels as he said in an even more oppressive tone. Dustless's indifference and even contempt had touched Z's bottom line. His student was killed. Dustless not only didn't show any sign of remorse, this cold and perfunctory attitude made Z feel contempt. This is my attitude towards the justice you speak of. It doesn't matter who is right or wrong because the final say is not in their hands. Lightly glancing at Z, Dustless said without any emotion. What is justice? When you ignore this inherent definition, you will find that the one who can judge evil and justice is actually the one with the biggest fist. Justice. The winner is the justice. It's so simple. For example, Dustless's mouth raised a cold arc. His body disappeared in an instant and disappeared into the darkness. His speed has reached the realm of perfection, escaping the perception of Z's observation hockey. This guy is using some kind of ability to move, not relying on the speed of his body. Z's body stiffened. Now my fist is bigger than yours, so I can judge that you are an evil person. If I say you are guilty, then you are guilty. A demonic whisper entered Z's ears, followed by a flash of golden light. Armament hockey hardening. With a low shout, the surface of his body was replaced by a dark color. Z had long predicted that Dustless would take the opportunity to use armament hockey. Clang. An ear-piercing boom spread throughout the entire room, and an invisible ripple spread out, causing everyone to feel dizzy. All the decorations in the room instantly exploded. Ka. Under the impact of the brute force, the geographical position of the entire room was dislocated. Despicable. Knowing that Dustless is an ability user, Z's right arm was also covered with armament hockey. His fist was enough to smash a giant building, and he mercilessly punched his head. Chapter 571. Z was shocked and angry. He originally wanted to persuade Dustless to stop and restrain Doflamingo, but he didn't expect Dustless to reach for a yard after getting an inch. Just because of a verbal disagreement, Dustless attacked. He turned his face faster than flipping a book. Ka. The powerful fist that was enough to crush a Navy warship suddenly fell on Dustless. He didn't dodge and his brain exploded in an instant. The ground was splashed with dark red blood stains. The scene was extremely bloody and violent. He was blown out of shape. That's impossible. Instead of feeling happy, Z tightened his nerves. His observation haki spread out, guarding the surrounding environment. If Dustless could be killed so easily, he would have died hundreds of times. When he first came to Mariehua, he was defeated by Dustless. Even if Z used all his strength at that time, he was still afraid of Dustless's power. At that time, Dustless didn't break out all his strength. The humans in your world are really monsters. Physical skills can be practiced to such a terrifying level. It's obvious that you are already in your twilight years but still have such a powerful strength. Incredible. Z's voice was full of praise. Then he saw that Wu Chen was still sitting in his original position and was still savoring the fragrant tea in his hand. He was sizing up Z from a bird's eye view. When he turned around, he saw that Wu Chen had disappeared into thin air. The bloodstains on the ground also disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened. Everything was back to the original problem. Not only that, Z also felt an abnormal pain in his arm. This guy, when did he do it? I was the one who defeated him, so why is this happening? Z's eyes solidified, looking at his smoking arm. His gloomy face was hard to hide. He can penetrate the defense made by my armament haki. Has he reached such a level at such a young age? Looking up, Z saw that Z's right arm has been completely penetrated. The wound was as big as a thumb. It was obviously a scorching type attack. The wound has been burned and it's only a minor injury. Was what just happened an illusion? For the first time in his life, Z felt that his eyes were blurred and there was visual confusion. Reality and illusion are often only separated by a single thought. Everything is like the moon in the water. What you see is only the reflection of the light in the water. It is only a pure illusion. Seeing Z's face full of hesitation and bewilderment, Wu Chen explained in a soft voice. Just a few casual words, but it contained the truth of the world. Z suddenly became enlightened. He looked up at Dustless, who was close at hand. Even if it only takes a few short steps to reach Dustless, the gap between them gave Z a sense of powerlessness. Even if it was only a few inches, Z was sure that as long as Wu Chen wanted to, he would never be able to touch him. This was not a gap in strength, but a huge gap in dimension. It was a gap that was difficult to cross just by relying on hard work. Why didn't you kill me? You can injure me, which means you can take my life. Z asked in a deep voice. His tone was full of puzzlement and deep doubts. Carefully looking at the small wound on his arm, Z suddenly understood that this was not a life-and-death battle but more like a fight between children. Dustless casually smiled and didn't want to be serious. Casually playing around is fine. There is no need to fight to the death. Z was shocked that he was like a powerless clown. He couldn't make waves. He could only be controlled by Dustless. He was even sure that if he wanted to, he would have been killed on the spot by Dustless. Your life will naturally be taken by someone else, that's all. Staring at Z with deep meaning, Dustless shook his head without leaving a trace. He can see that Z loves the Marine very much. For this he was willing to give up his life. Today he dared to face Dustless head-on. This shows that he is willing to give up everything. However, in the later days, such a person who loved the Marine so much without any hesitation hated the entire Marine headquarters to the bone. He wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. The huge contrast really makes people feel that the world is fickle and the fate of many ghosts. There is no need to kill you because Doflamingo has become one of the Shichibukai. His thumb slightly hooked and the newspaper floated in front of Z. The content that caught his eyes was the laughing Doflamingo. At this moment he has become a member of the Shichibukai organization. Z looked at Doflamingo in the newspaper. His previous worldview gradually collapsed. He didn't expect that Doflamingo, this kind of butcher, could join the Shichibukai organization. A large number of Marine rookies died in his hands. How can this garbage join the Shichibukai to show off? He killed countless Marines and didn't get the punishment he deserved. How can Z accept this? Most of the Marine interns who were killed were his students. If you want to blame someone, blame your own fate, Z. Staring at Z's pale face, Dustless had some sympathy for him. Z in front of him was like a candle in the wind, extremely fragile. The Marine who was loyal to him betrayed him. It's not hard to imagine how he would feel. I'm afraid he is completely disappointed and desperate. This kind of thing can't be accepted by anyone. This guy's heart is very broad. Wu Chen secretly said in his heart. He admired Z a little more. If someone dared to betray him, even if he chased him to the ends of the earth, Wu Chen would tear him into pieces as a warning to others. Unknowingly, Z's mentality began to quietly change. For the Marines he loved in the past, his heart's desire to protect them gradually decreased. There was even a bit of hatred in his heart. However, he still suppressed this irritable feeling of resentment. Dustless saw this and just smiled. The reason why Z betrayed the Marine is not because of other factors, but because he was forced to embark on this thorny road of no return. Chapter 572. Z almost collapsed. He didn't expect the Marine to be so unbearable. He didn't choose to resist but shamefully bowed his head. It also indirectly means that his students who died in the battle are doomed to be unable to avenge them and can only swallow their anger. Thinking about the future, Doflamingo, this kind of evil person can continue to bring disaster to the world intact. Z's forehead had a ferocious veins undulating, and his steady breathing also became coarse. Z's mind was in a trance. In the unseen world he could hear the souls of the fallen students. Their unwilling and mournful cries pierced through his ears and into his brain, driving his will. Dying in the hands of pirates can be said to be a disguised form of martyrdom. Falling in the hands of Shichibukai will only make them a laughing stock, because to some extent they can be regarded as one of us. See off the guest. After glancing at Z, Dustless closed his eyes and said casually. Dustless turned a deaf ear to Z's offensive impulse. He is a Marine Admiral-level character, and he is indeed a tragic character. Forgiving him once is not a big deal. Please. Hancock made an elegant gesture to Z, indicating that Z can leave. Z's cold eyes looked at Dustless. He seemed to be hesitating whether to leave or not, but after glancing at the Marine battleship docked in the harbor, he resolutely turned and left. This old guy is so tactful. Seeing Z simply turn around and leave, Wu Qin opened his eyes. Z gave him a simple feeling that he was the type of stubborn old man. He was the type of old man who would stick to the rules. Suddenly there was a strong wind in front of him. Dustless was slightly surprised. He immediately raised his eyelids and saw the tall body of Z, who took the opportunity to attack. Boom boom boom, the powerful fist blasted over with full force. Just as it was about to crush Dustless, his entire person strangely disappeared. It was as if he had completely integrated into the void, disappearing without a trace in an instant. I knew you wouldn't leave so easily. Z turned to look at Dustless, whose left eye turned into Sharingan, and sneered. When facing pirates, have you ever seen a Marine admiral who fled without fighting? Subconsciously, Z has classified Wu Qin as a type of pirate. Even compared to the pirates who commit all kinds of crimes, he knows how to use the power given by the government to be more evil. Z felt that using the word pirate to describe Wu Qin was simply an insult to the word. Marine admiral who fled without fighting? Maybe there will be one in the history of the Marine today. A demonic whisper sounded in Z's ears, and Dustless was not in a hurry to fight his opponent. If I didn't guess wrong, when you went to Mariehua, you also brought your students who were struggling at death's door? Looking at Z's strong body, Dustless said with a smile. You bastard, don't tell me you want to. Hearing this, Z's eyes were about to split open. His eyes were burning with flames. He wasn't an idiot. What Wu Qin meant was that he was going to make a move on that group of students. A peerless master without the slightest cultivation, despicable to such a shameless degree, he would choose to attack a group of students who have no power to truss a chicken. This is the first time Z has seen it. Ka. Without thinking, Z broke the window and jumped out of the 10-meter-high window. His body fell straight to the ground and swept toward the battleship docked on the shore like a hurricane. Z was determined to protect the remaining students even if he had to risk his life. This old guy is really fickle. He just said that there is no Marine admiral who retreats without fighting, and now he is running away. Staring at the black ink spots that have gradually disappeared in the distance, Dustless touched his forehead and seemed quite helpless. His tangled tone seemed to be a headache for Z. Young master, when did you send someone to attack his crew? Hancock elegantly stood beside Dustless, tilted her head and curiously asked. Dustless didn't contact anyone for a quarter of an hour. When did he order his men to attack Z's fleet? She was really curious. Attack? I didn't send anyone to attack. I just used Z's mentality to worry about his companions. In the final analysis, he is still a righteous person. In his eyes, the lives of the students are more important than mine, so he was so impatient. Dustless replied calmly. He was just using Z's mentality to make a sneak attack. If at this moment Z was replaced by a Kainu, he wouldn't care about this group of people. Anyway, it's just a few insignificant pawns. It's not a big deal. No one will care about it. Every day there are countless soldiers all over the world dying in battle. Master, you are really cunning. Hancock didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect Dustless to be so proficient in playing tricks. But will he go and come back? Her eyes fell on Dustless's body. Hancock asked with concern. Z's strength was unfathomable, and the entire Mariehua might be destroyed by the fight. Of course, this is only the case where the five deliberately indulge. Well, thinking of Z's nature, Wu Chen's eyes flashed with a bone-piercing cold light. He sneered, I've given him a chance. If that old guy really comes back, then I'll take his little life. The sonorous and powerful voice contains confidence. Z is very powerful. Dustless also has 100% certainty to take him down. No one can pose much threat to him. But then again, Doflamingo's next goal is the King of Dressrosa. With his forehead squeezed together, Dustless remembered that Doflamingo has become a Shichibukai. I am afraid that his next plan is to seek the position of the King of Dressrosa. Caesar can also secretly create Pluto under his protection. Perfect and consolidate Dustless's ambition to unify the world. Chapter 573. Returning to the battleship, Z's face was twitching, the students were snoring and sleeping, there was saliva on the corners of their mouths, their expressions were rich and comfortable. Obviously they were having a good dream. Who is that guy? Looking at the direction of Dustless's villa, Z's heart was mixed. He knew that this was Dustless' intention to let him go. Z was also prepared to die in battle, but he didn't expect Dustless to play this kind of trick. No matter from any point of view, this is an unsolvable dead end. After thinking about it for a while, Z no longer entangled himself. There was a saying that it was better to live than to die. Since he knew that Wu Qin intended to let him go, it was impossible for him to foolishly go back to die. After resting for about half a day, Z chose to leave Mariehua. These remaining students were really tired and needed to be given time to relax. Looking around Z's current students, many of them will become the future mainstays, such as Smoker, who has outstanding strength. They are all here. Above the tall building, looking down at the battleship far away, even if it has become a tiny black dot, Dustless can see it clearly under his eyes. For him, distance is just a concept. Separated from each other by the ends of the earth, it is also insignificant. It seems that you are not a reckless man. Retracting his gaze, Dustless walked into the room with light steps. A huge narrow map came into view, and it was densely covered with red and white flags. White represents the Navy, while red represents the pirates. The whole map is almost occupied by the red pirate flag, everywhere in the four seas as well as the New World. The power is far larger than Marine. It is a behemoth that can crush Marine. With such a big disadvantage, the Marines should have been strangled. The actual reason why they were able to survive until now was because the pirates were in a state of disunity. Otherwise, if all their forces were concentrated, the Marines would have been wiped out forever. In the future, the Yonko, four emperors, Whitebeard pirates almost destroyed the Marine headquarters. The power of all the pirates in the world can be imagined. How to lead one's own forces to survive was indeed a question worthy of consideration. Although Dustless's current strength could be said to be invincible, nothing was absolute. There was absolutely nothing wrong with taking a long-term view. The next step should be to obtain Dressrosa, to help that old brat Doflamingo ascend the throne. His gaze fell on the narrow island of Dressrosa. Dustless's eyes, which were usually calm, were filled with the flames of ambition. The weak are prey to the strong. Since you can't keep up with the times, you can only bid farewell to this world, royal family of Luke. Living a comfortable life would only cause creatures to stop evolving and lose the will to forge ahead. Dressrosa was like that now. They were completely going with the flow. Living a stable life, they were seizing every moment. It was no wonder that they were ruthlessly crushed by Doflamingo. Every man for himself. Dustless would only show his benevolent heart to his own people. As for others, he would see if they had any value. Beep beep beep. The blue den mushy on the left side of the map rang, and Doflamingo's voice sounded. Surprisingly, there was no joy in his voice. Instead, there was dissatisfaction. Did Sengoku go back on his word? Dustless sat down casually and asked calmly. On the other side, Doflamingo was startled, then shook his head and said to Dustless's den mushy, "That's not it. He has already announced in front of the world. Going back on his word is like shooting himself in the foot. The Marine is righteous. Naturally, It's impossible for them to be like a pirate who doesn't keep his word. If they speak out, they will be hated by the whole world. The prestige of the Marine will be greatly reduced. I sent someone to inform Dressrosa to hand over the throne of the Don Quixote family. That old brat refused my offer. Doflamingo said angrily. A mere ant dared to refuse his offer. This is tantamount to slapping his face. The throne of the royal family originally belonged to the Don Quixote family. Taking back the former throne, this is the most normal thing in Doflamingo's view. This is normal. If it was me, it would be impossible to hand over the throne. The people of the royal family are still very popular. Even if you forcibly take away his throne, the local people will not recognize your existence. Dustless explained lightly. The interest in his heart was swept away. He thought that Doflamingo was talking about an interesting topic. He didn't expect the content to be so boring. Indeed. Doflamingo nodded in agreement. It's easy to kill an ant. The key is to make the people accept him as the new king. Although he can't wait to eliminate the group of ants, Doflamingo still needs these people to create the illusion of peace and prosperity, to confuse the world. Only in this way can he cover up some shady things in the dark. Even a wise man will make a mistake. Dustless sighed in his heart. He didn't expect Doflamingo to make such a big mistake. This is obviously the strength of this kid. If there are no conditions, you can create conditions. Wu Chen's eyes glowed with a ruthless light. He was not a soft-hearted person. He said in a cold voice, use your fruit's ability to temporarily control King Luke to slaughter the islanders. Of course, that includes the soldiers he leads. At that time, you can save them as a savior and wash away the image of a butcher. This is just my idea. It's up to you whether to use it or not. After that, without waiting for Doflamingo to answer, Wu Chen simply hung up the Den Den Mushi, and his eyes once again fell on the huge long and narrow map, and his eyes sometimes showed a strange look. On the other side of the Den Den Mushi, Doflamingo was stunned. He didn't expect Dustless to be so ruthless. But after thinking about it, he thought that this is indeed a feasible plan and the most effective and direct. A group of ants is dead. Anyway, the number of towns destroyed by Doflamingo can be counted on 2 hands. One more island is not a big deal. Chapter 574. Doflamingo's choice has nothing to do with Dustless. The former is more anxious than him, and human life is equivalent to grass for a pirate like Doflamingo who kills people like flax. According to Dustless's speculation, Doflamingo can't wait to implement this ruthless plan, which is comparable to his ambition to swallow the sky and devour the earth. The death of a few human lives is insignificant, it's just a small matter. Dustless is still interested in setting his future plans. If he wants to get a share of the pie in the future world, he must have a perfect plan for rainy days. The opportunity will not come again, and it is often left to those who are prepared in advance. Dustless's plan is also quite simple: suppress the enemy and strengthen himself. Both the Akagami, red hair, pirates and the Kaido pirates have been weakened by him in various ways. Compared with the miserable Akagami, red hair, pirates who were almost killed, the Kaido pirates are much stronger. Although they were also extremely tragic by Dustless, they are much better than Akagami, red hair, Shanks who withdrew from the New World. Next is the Bigamam pirates and the Whitebeard pirates. The world is so big that the 4 seas are still okay. In the second half of the New World, most of it is occupied by the Yonko, 4 emperors. If you want to grab food from the tiger's mouth, you can only pull the teeth from the tiger's mouth. However, this is tantamount to self-destruction for most pirates. The power of the Yonko, 4 emperors, is beyond imagination. Dustless, Sama, what you want is here. White Zetsu emerged from the ground, holding a delicate iron box in his hands, quietly buckling the lid and baking it with an extremely strong iron lock, looking quite mysterious. In order to provoke the Whitebeard pirates and the Bigamam pirates, Dustless spent a lot of money. Isn't it a pity to give this thing to that old witch by Gumamu? No matter what, it's still the strongest and most evil dark fruit of the Logia. The dark fruit in this iron box is Logia's dark fruit, known as the most evil fruit in history. Its ability is terrible and it can form a black hole like gravity that swallows everything. How could White Zetsu be willing to give away such a powerful devil fruit to Bigamam, that old witch? It took him nearly a year to find this devil fruit with countless doppelgangers. Bigamam, that old witch, is ashamed. Why don't you give it to Miss? I think it will be of great use to her. Staring at Dustless, White Zetsu suggested tentatively. The matter of giving birth to a daughter was said by Dustless himself. There was a flash of hesitation in his eyes, and then he shook his head decisively. This plan is not feasible. It's still too early for that little girl to use the devil fruit. Let her waste it. Twos. What's more, if he secretly fed the dark fruit to Yushi, Dustless would guarantee that Kagaya would hunt him down all over the world. Secondly, using the devil fruit was equivalent to having an additional weakness. He would become a non-swimmer and unable to step into the sea. And this weakness is well known to the world. At first, Dustless also had the idea of dark fruit, but he had the system's bugs, existence and didn't care about the gains and losses of a devil fruit. But giving the dark fruit to the Bigumam pirates will cause the power of their pirates to expand rapidly. White Zetsu murmured, he has also heard of the dark fruit's heaven-defyings. It is far more heaven-defying than ordinary Logia's ability. It doesn't matter, as long as you can provoke Bigumam and Whitebeard to fight, a devil fruit is insignificant. Dustless said quite casually, White Zetsu's problem is not a problem. Even if the dark fruit is eaten, it is not a big problem as long as the other party is killed. At that time the dark fruit will reappear again. With White Zetsu's huge clone, it is only a matter of time to find it. Whitebeard is very cunning. That guy should not rashly fight with Bigumam for a devil fruit. White Zetsu said with a little doubt. Even if the Yonko, 4 emperors, have grievances, they will maintain great restraint. Once the fight starts, the Marines who are watching the fire from the other side of the river and other ambitious pirates who covet the position of Yonko, 4 emperors. Ants can bite an elephant to death, and the power of countless ants can also collapse a river dam. It is not difficult to tear apart the tired Yonko, 4 emperors. Whitebeard will not be his opponent, but Blackbeard is anxiously waiting. Dustless smiled calmly when he heard this. Whitebeard will not do it, but Blackbeard, a man with ambition who can swallow the 4 seas, will not give up. His purpose of hiding the Whitebeard pirates for so many years is to get this most evil fruit in history. If the 2 overlords don't do anything, their pirates will fight. At that time they will naturally jump from behind the scenes to the front. Dustless is the master of protecting his children, and Bigumam also can't rub sand in his eyes. The 2 of them are naturally dry wood and fire. They don't need Dustless to fan the flames to fight. Reluctantly handing the dark fruit to Dustless, White Zetsu also understands that he can't catch the wolf without sacrificing the child. If he wants to hook a scheming man like Blackbeard, only the dark fruit can attract his appetite. Today Blackbeard is also extremely powerful. The 3 scars on Red Hair Shank's eyes were his masterpiece, and he himself had a few teeth knocked out. No matter what, it's still mine in the end. With a blazing heat in his hand, Dustless easily melted the iron box, revealing a strange purple fruit full of patterns. The surface gives people a feeling of extreme evil. A coldness that pierces the depths of the soul spreads from it. When the host of the fruit was killed, the ability would not disappear. Instead, it would appear in a different form. From the beginning to the end, this devil fruit would not escape the control of Dustless. Even if it was eaten by Whitebeard in the future, he could just kill him. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.